Chapter 764. You win, King Arthur. When this sentence echoed in the air and entered Saber's ears, Saber felt it. Behind her, the scent of assassin disappeared little by little until it completely disappeared. Opening her eyes and staring at the holy sword in her hand, Saber whispered softly as if she was talking to the swordsman who was no longer there. As a servant with low ability and no noble phantasm, you can use your sword technique to release my wind barrier, invisible air, and use the holy sword. You should be proud, Sasaki Kojiro. The main function of Saber's wind barrier, invisible air, was to hide the Excalibur so that her real name and noble phantasm would not be exposed. Therefore, even though the invisible wind barrier had the effect of concealing weapons, and if used well the effect would be amazing. However, in order to maintain the effect of this noble phantasm, Saber's mana was constantly being depleted, and she was unable to fully utilize it. Once the wind barrier, invisible air, was released, Saber, who did not need to maintain the wind barrier, invisible air, was able to use all of her magical power and all of her power to display her true strength. Therefore, although it was just a simple matter of turning the holy sword from invisible to tangible, it meant that Saber had used all of her strength. If a numerical value must be used to compare, in the case of maintaining the wind barrier, invisible air, Saber's strength was probably around 80% or 90% of her peak. Only by releasing the wind barrier, invisible air, and taking out her holy sword, Saber could concentrate all of her magical power to maintain the wind barrier, invisible air, and display her full strength. A servant with low ability and no noble phantasm could force Saber to this extent. It was indeed something to be proud of. Pung! Just when the winner was decided between Saber and Assassin, from the other side of the stone steps, a heavy muffled sound echoed in the air. Whoosh! Following the heavy muffled sound, a figure flew out like an arrow leaving a bow, carrying a sharp sound as it broke through the air and heavily smashed into the pillar of the mountain gate. Poochie! Then, a mouthful of blood spurted out from that person's mouth. His body was like a puppet with a broken string, and slowly fell down. It was only then that Saber reacted. She quickly raised her head and looked in the direction of the mountain gate. Soichiro-sama! Castor let out a sorrowful cry, and looked at the figure below the mountain gate with extreme resentment. He said in a hysterical voice, "You! How dare you!" The one who had heavily smashed into the pillar of the mountain gate was, shockingly, Gumu Zangakiro. At the foot of the mountain gate, Noah turned his body sideways and looked straight at Gumu Soichiro, who had hit the pillar, and said with a calm face, "See, you can't win just because you've trained for a long time, right?" To be honest, Kugi Soichiro-sama's fist technique was quite exquisite. It's just that the fist technique was too focused on the word strange. Although the moves were very subtle and strange if it was used for a surprise attack, as long as the opponent was slightly careless, it was possible to kill the opponent, even if the opponent was stronger than Kugi Soichiro. But because of this, if the opponent saw through the fist technique, or was vigilant in advance, then the fist technique without the effect of strange would be of little use. At least for Noah, who had extraordinary sensing ability and exquisite fighting skills, it was true. Therefore, after seeing through Kugi Soichiro's fist technique, Kugi Soichiro could no longer fight with Noah, and was directly defeated by Noah. After all, in any case, even if he didn't use the power, Noah could compete with the highest level of servant. There were strong and weak servants. Kugi Soichiro, who was strengthened by Castor's magic, could indeed compete with the servant. However, with Kugi Soichiro's strength, there was no way to compete with the highest level of servant, such as Berserker. So the result was doomed. It was impossible for Kugi Soichiro not to understand this point. Therefore, Castor's support became the most important. Unfortunately, magic has no effect on me. Castor can only be reduced to a spectator. Noah glanced at Castor and said such a sentence with a smile. And do you think I don't know that you have been waiting for me to use the magic cannon? Castor. Castor's face changed in an instant. A divine magician who doesn't even care about a large-scale ritual like the Holy Grail War? You must have a countermeasure against my magic cannon, right? Noah sneered. Although the power of that magic has been greatly improved because of my magical power, after all, its predecessor is still the magic bullet. For magic, it's impossible that you don't have a way to deal with it. If it weren't for my magic enhancement, I'm afraid that you would even have a countermeasure against it, right? I have to say your brain is really good. Not only did you prepare the card assassin, but you also pulled Lancer to your side. Even Kugi Soichiro, the master who can compete with the servant, is on your side. Noah sighed. However, you are not the only smart person in this world. You are smart, it's not a problem. The problem is that you don't treat others as fools. If you can think of it, others can also think of it. If you have a hidden card, others will naturally have it too. You didn't see that I have the ability to make magic ineffective. This is your biggest mistake. After that, Noah looked at Castor. Checkmate, Castor. This sentence made Castor completely excited. No. I have prepared so much. I will never lose here. After that, Castor raised one of his hands above his head. Buzz. Suddenly, the entire mountain where Ludong Temple was located began to tremble, and a huge amount of magical power was poured into Castor's body. With the turbulent flow of magical power pouring into Castor's body, Castor's magical power became more and more violent. That magical power was all absorbed from the residents of Fuyuki City, right? I don't believe that even if it's a magic that can burn Ludong Temple, you can't completely nullify it. In that sharp voice, a staff suddenly appeared in Castor's hand. Whoosh! However, just when Castor was about to use the magic that could burn Ludong Temple, an arrow with flame-like magical power flashed through the space, like a meteor, piercing the sky and shot toward Castor. Poochie! The meteor-like arrow directly penetrated Castor's body and came out from the back of Castor's heart. Castor's expression, movements, and the huge amount of magical power in his body were all stagnant. Turning his head stiffly, Castor looked at the direction where the arrow came from. There, Archer was kneeling on the ground with blood on his mouth, holding a bow in his hand. His face was pale and he sneered. This is a gift for you which, Archer, who was almost killed by Lancer because of Castor's calculation, got his revenge at this most critical moment. Archer! In a very unwilling cry, Castor's body gradually dissipated and finally, he followed Assassin's path. Looking at Castor's figure gradually disappeared, Gumu Soichiro, who was leaning against the pillar of the mountain gate, closed his eyes. Castor exit. Chapter 765. Who? The mountain wind once again blew past the stone stairs in front of the mountain gate. It was as if the tense atmosphere in the air had been swept away as it slowly blew past. After Castor and Assassin left the arena, Kumoi Soichiro leaned against the pillar of the mountain gate and closed his eyes. Noah, Rinenbin, Saber, and Archer didn't know what to say for a while, so they stayed in the same place and fell into silence. Tonight's battle could be regarded as the real cruel and ferocious side of the Holy Grail War. The probing battle like before no longer existed, and it was replaced by a real battle. Tonight, the two servants took the lead to withdraw, announcing the victory of Noah's team. However, in the face of a victory that was achieved through killing, almost none of the four present could feel a sense of accomplishment and joy of victory. Noah and Rinenbin looked at each other. Then they looked at the mountain gate above at the same time. To be more precise, it should be said that they looked at Gumu Soichiro, who was leaning on the stone pillar of the mountain gate, as if he was already dead. Then Noah spoke. I don't have a hobby of killing people. Don't make it sound like I like to kill people. Rinenbin, who was about to say something, was silenced by Noah's words. After glaring at Noah, he sighed and looked at Gumu Soichiro and said, Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. You have already lost, Gumu-sensei. If you don't want to be killed by other masters, you should quickly escape to the church and seek refuge. In such a case, generally it was impossible to leave a master alive. After all, even if the servant has withdrawn, as long as the master is not dead and still has the command seal, then they will not lose the qualification to continue to participate in the Holy Grail War. If they are lucky or have the ability, the master who still has the command seal can sign a contract with another servant and continue to participate in the Holy Grail War. In order to prevent such a thing from happening during the Holy Grail War, the master will be obliterated. Gumu Soichiro seemed to be clear about this point. He opened his eyes as indifferent as before, as if he didn't care about his life at all, and said expressionlessly, Are you not going to kill me? I'm sorry, I don't have a hobby of killing people. Rinenbin turned his head away. So before I change my mind, you should quickly escape to the church. As soon as this sentence fell, A sneer echoed in the forest. Unfortunately, there is no way for this person to survive even if he escapes to the church, so the loser should obey the rules and directly leave here. Such a voice came from afar, drilling into the ears of everyone present. Everyone present was shocked. They all turned their heads and looked at the source of the voice. Of course Noah. Because Noah didn't feel that someone was coming. Of course, it wasn't because the other party hid from Noah's sensing ability. It was because the other party wasn't even within Noah's sensing range. He just let his voice pass. Then Noah and the rest saw it. In the direction of the voice, a luxurious-looking spear suddenly shot out, like a bullet, directly landing on Gumu Soichiro's body. Poochie! The sound of a body being pierced through resounded in the sky above Ludong Temple. Gumu Soichiro, whose chest was pierced, spat out a muffled groan, his eyes wide open, but his expression remained the same. There was no change at all. Immediately, Gumu Soichiro maintained this appearance, and gradually lost his vitality. Gumu Soichiro dead. The sudden change shocked Noah and the rest. Who? Saber yelled, stomped on the ground, and rushed out like a gust of wind, chasing the source of the voice and the spear. Rin and Osaka wanted to chase after her, but Noah pulled her back. Ever since they came to Ludong Temple, Rin and Osaka had been pulled by Noah. Moreover, every time she was pulled, it meant that something bad was about to happen. This made Rin and Osaka a little anxious. What's wrong now? Hearing this, Noah didn't say anything. He only smiled bitterly, turned his head and looked at Archer, who was still half kneeling on the ground. Meeting Noah's gaze, Archer, who was clutching his chest, smiled bitterly. I really can't hide from you? Archer's words made Rin and Osaka have a bad feeling. What's wrong? Hearing Rin and Osaka's words, Noah and Archer didn't answer. Under such circumstances, Archer suddenly said this sentence. Do you know where I came from? Noah and Rin and Osaka were both stunned. However, there was a reason why Archer said this. Oh right, you still don't know, right? Archer looked at Noah and said helplessly. Actually, Rin didn't know my identity, including my real name. This time Noah was really surprised. He looked at Rin and Osaka. It was fine if others didn't know. As Archer's master, how could Rin and Osaka not know Archer's real name? Could it be that Rin and Osaka was so bad that she forgot to ask for the servant's real name? It's not my fault, Rin and Osaka quickly said. During the summoning process, Archer's memory seemed to be in a mess. He couldn't even remember who he was. That's why I didn't know. Well, I guess that's what happened. Archer smiled helplessly. Now, let me tell you where I came from. You. Rin and Osaka was shocked. You've recovered your memory? Don't expect too much. I'm not a famous hero, and I'm not a character that appears in legends. Perhaps in this world no one knows my name. Archer closed his eyes. If you want to know why, it's because I'm a heroic spirit from the future. Noah and Rin and Osaka frowned at the same time. A heroic spirit from the future. This was not something to be surprised about. Heroic spirits were spirits that had left the world and existed outside of it. They were not bound by the time and space of the world itself. Therefore, the heroic spirit throne that existed outside of the world had gathered heroes from the past, present, and even the future. Therefore, it was not strange that Archer was a heroic spirit from the future. Yes, there's nothing strange about a heroic spirit from the future. You're just wondering why I'm telling you this, right? Archer seemed to have seen through Noah and Rin Enbin's thoughts as he spoke calmly. Now that things have come to this, there's nothing to hide. Regardless of what happened to me after I became a heroic spirit, before I became a heroic spirit, I was already living in this era. Noah and Rin and Osaka looked at each other in dismay when they heard this. Noah's frown deepened as he asked with uncertainty. In other words, before you became a heroic spirit, you were still a human. Now you're in this world? That's strange, isn't it? Archer said self-deprecatingly. But you're only half right. Half? Noah was confused. What do you mean? Before I became a heroic spirit, I was still a human living in this era, Archer said in a deep voice. But I'm not in this world. After hearing Archer's words, Noah's heart skipped a beat. Even Rin and Osaka seemed to have thought of something and blurted it out. Parallel world? Correct. Archer's expression was complicated. Otherwise, there's no way to explain why I don't exist in this world. Noah and Rin and Osaka understood Archer's words. In other words, Archer was from this era when he was alive. However, in this world, in this era, Archer did not exist when he was alive. In that case, the only explanation left was the parallel world. Chapter 766. The so-called parallel worlds actually referred to worlds that were similar, but had some differences in certain aspects. Just like two sides of a mirror, parallel worlds were like mirrors that looked at each other. They were on different parallel lines and would only look at each other, but would not interact with each other. The difference was that if you looked at a normal mirror, the inside and outside of the mirror would be the same. Parallel worlds, however, would have differences in certain aspects. For example, Archer was one such example. Undoubtedly, he existed in this era when he was alive, but there was no Archer in this era when he was alive. This meant that Archer did not exist in this era when he was alive. Instead, he existed in this era of another parallel world. After a long period of time, he achieved greatness and became a heroic spirit. It's basically confirmed that I don't exist in this world. At least, I didn't find myself in this world. Archer's voice was complicated, but also relieved. Perhaps this is a good thing. A good thing? Rin and Osaka asked. Why? Why would there be a reason? Archer said sarcastically. No matter who it is, they would be dissatisfied with their past. Unfortunately, no matter which world it is, there is no such thing as a regret medicine. As for me, my dissatisfaction is so great that I feel like it's a good thing that I don't exist anymore. Noah went silent. Let's not talk about whether Archer was right or wrong. Noah felt that no matter which world it was, there were plenty of people with unbearable pasts. The Archer servant in front of him was obviously one of them. Rin and Osaka stared at Archer as if she was trying to see through his heart. She bit her lips. Why are you suddenly saying this? Why? Archer's expression revealed a hint of helplessness. I just feel like if I don't say it now, I won't have the chance to say it in the future. The bad premonition in Rin Enbin's heart suddenly grew stronger, causing her to bite her lips harder and harder. Archer sighed and finally let go of his hand that was covering his chest. When Archer removed his hand from his chest and let Noah and Rin Enbin see his chest, Noah and Rin Enbin reacted differently. Noah seemed to have expected this and closed his eyes. Rin and Osaka's eyes widened as he fell silent. On Archer's chest where his heart was there was a hole. A large amount of blood seeped out and dyed Archer's clothes red. As you can see, Archer forced a smile. When I was ambushed by Lancer, my heart was taken away by that deadly magic gun right from the start. It's already not bad that I'm able to hold on until now. The ominous premonition came true. Rin Enbin gritted his teeth, his expression filled with unwillingness. He had no choice but to accept this. Archer's heart had been pierced through. If he wasn't a spirit and had been holding on, he would have died a long time ago. Archer's departure meant that Rin Enbin had lost her master status. Of course, Rin Enbin still had the command curse. If she could find another servant to contract with, she could continue to participate in the Holy Grail War as a master. However, losing the servant that he had summoned was already a loss for Rin Osaka. For a girl like her who saw victory as her mission, it was hard to accept this fact. Rin Enbin didn't feel as sad about Archer's disappearance. After all, the disappearance of the servant didn't mean that they were gone. Originally, the servants in the Holy Grail War were just the avatars of the heroic spirits in the outer world. Archer's disappearance meant that he had returned to the seat of heroic spirits. He didn't really die. I'm sorry, Archer, Rin Enbin smiled weakly. If I didn't ask you to provide long-range support and asked you to come with us, you wouldn't have been attacked by Lancer, and you wouldn't have had to leave now. I'm always like this. I always make mistakes at the most crucial moments. If you want to resent me, resent me. You think too much, Rin. I don't have any reason to resent you. Archer shook his head. I don't want to fulfill my wish, so I don't care much about the Holy Grail. I only fought because you wanted to. I don't resent anyone. However, I hope that you will remember what I'm about to say. Archer's expression suddenly became serious. You need to be careful. The Holy Grail might not be a good thing. Archer's sudden words shocked Noah and Rin Enbin. What did he mean by that? As I said before, I was also a person of this era. Archer said word by word under Noah and Rin Enbin's surprised expression. Actually, in my life, I participated in the Holy Grail War as a master, And I almost won the Holy Grail. Noah and Rin Enbin looked at each other. Once obtained the Holy Grail? Noah asked in return. In other words, in the end, you didn't get the Holy Grail? It's not that I didn't get it, but I gave up. Archer didn't keep them in suspense anymore. Do you know the principle behind this ritual called the Holy Grail War? Noah and Rin Enbin nodded at the same time. As everyone knew, there was a spiritual vein under Fuyuki City. The so-called spiritual vein, in fact, could also be called the Earth Vein. It was connected to the source of infinite magic, and there was an extremely large amount of magic flowing through the terrain. This was the case in Mayo City. This was also the case in Fuyuki City. The Holy Grail War that existed in Fuyuki City was based on this foundation. The three magicians, Enbin, Jiantong, and Einsteinberg, built a large-scale magic array on the land of Fuyuki City. This large-scale magic array had the ability to draw magic from Fuyuki City's Earth Vein and store it. With the magic power stored in this large-scale magic circle as the source, about every 60 years, the magic power in the veins of Fuyuki City would accumulate enough to support the launch of the Holy Grail War, which would be the beginning of the Holy Grail War. Most of the magic needed to summon the servant was provided by this magic array. Therefore, this large-scale magic array was also called the Great Holy Grail. Selecting a candidate for the master, bestowing the stigmata upon the master, and making contact with the seat of heroic spirits outside the world, allowing the master to effortlessly summon heroic spirits, which should have been incomparably difficult. These were all the functions of the Great Holy Grail. In addition to the Great Holy Grail, there was also a small Holy Grail. That was the real Holy Grail. This small Holy Grail was said to be made by the Einsteinberg family. Because of the knowledge instilled by Gaia and Aleia, Noah remembered that the little Holy Grail was a vessel responsible for collecting the souls of the 6 servants who died in the Holy Grail War. When they returned to the outside of the world, they used their power to pierce a hole in the world. Then they used the huge amount of magic accumulated in the Great Holy Grail to fix the hole, thereby creating a door to the outside of the world. It was a vessel to reach the root. This was the true face of the Holy Grail War. Under this purpose, the function of fulfilling any wish was just incidental. Therefore, before the souls of the 6 servants were stored in the small Holy Grail, this Holy Grail made by Einsteinberg did not have the power to fulfill wishes and open the path to the root. As if falling into a bad memory, Archer's face became ugly. Although I don't know if the same thing happened in this world, I still have to say that the Holy Grail is likely to have been contaminated. Chapter 767. Contamination. For a moment, Noah and Rin and Osaka almost didn't react to Archer's words. Especially Rin and Osaka, who was completely stunned. Noah still had some knowledge about the Holy Grail War from Gaia and Aleia, so he knew the true nature and purpose of the Holy Grail War. Rin and Osaka, on the other hand, didn't know anything about the Holy Grail War. Every 60 years, the Great Holy Grail in Fuyuki City would accumulate enough magic power to start the ritual. Until now, the Holy Grail War had been held for more than 5 times. That was to say, this Holy Grail War was the 5th Holy Grail War. Before this, the previous 4 Holy Grail Wars had all failed due to all kinds of problems. In the end, no one obtained the Holy Grail. Among them, the 4th Holy Grail War happened 10 years ago. Originally, after the Holy Grail War ceremony, if one wanted to perform another ceremony, they would have to wait for about 60 years to accumulate mana. However, because the 4th Holy Grail War did not reach the point where the magic accumulated in the Great Holy Grail could be completely used up, it only took 10 years for the Holy Grail War to accumulate enough magic power to start the Holy Grail War ahead of time. Just 10 years ago, the previous head of the Inosaka family, Rin Inosaka's father, participated in the Holy Grail War. In the end, he died in a hurry, so Rin Inosaka didn't have a proper understanding of the Holy Grail War. Rin Inosaka only knew the basics of the Holy Grail War from the church's overseer. Rin Osaka thought that the principle behind the Holy Grail War that Archer mentioned was that the 7 masters and the 7 servants had to decide a winner before the Holy Grail would descend. Rin Osaka didn't know that the so-called Holy Grail was already prepared by the barons. The only thing that was lacking was the power and ability to activate the Holy Grail, which was the souls of the 6 servants. Only after the souls of the 6 servants were filled, the Holy Grail would be truly formed. Rin and Osaka didn't know any of this. Seeing Rin and Osaka's confused look, Archer wanted to explain. but his body was suddenly filled with mist, making his body gradually become illusory. Archer! Rin and Osaka exclaimed. It seems that we don't have much time for a clear explanation. Archer clenched his teeth as he clutched his pierced heart and looked at Noah. Let's not talk about Ling for now. You seem to have some understanding of the true workings of the Holy Grail War, so I'll just say it directly. Just like the word said, the Holy Grail may have been contaminated. At least, that was the case in the Holy Grail War that I participated in when I was alive. Why? Noah did not waste any time and asked directly. Why was the Holy Grail contaminated? That happened during the Third Holy Grail War. Archer tried his best to explain what he knew in the most concise way. In the Holy Grail War, the House of Baron, who was not good at combat magic, used a foreign classic as a catalyst to summon an eighth servant, Avenger, which was different from the 7 classes of the Holy Grail War. The 8th rank servant? Noah frowned deeply. Avenger? Avenger? Rin and Osaka subconsciously clenched his hands because of this ominous rank. There is no doubt that it is an ominous rank. Archer smiled helplessly. That servant is not a hero, but the absolute evil of this world, the sum of all the evil in the world, the most ancient evil, and so on. Instead of saying that it is a heroic spirit, it is better to say that it is a body of consciousness formed by the concept itself. If Gaia is the consciousness of the planet, and Alea is the consciousness of mankind, then it is the consciousness of all the evil in this world. The same as the suppression? Rin and Osaka was completely stunned. Even Noah's face sank. He was secretly shocked. There was such a thing in the Holy Grail War? Why didn't Gaia and Alea mention it at all? Don't be so surprised. They just exist in the same form. The combination of all the evil in the world is a kind of curse. Although ordinary curses are not on the same level as it, they can't really be compared to the 2 great restraints. Archer laughed. If that world's evil can really be on par with the restraining power, let alone a Holy Grail whose authenticity is unknown, even if all the Holy Grail, including the real one, were added together, it would still be impossible to summon the existence of the restraining power. Hearing this, Noah and Rin and Osaka both sighed in relief. If there really was an existence on the same level as the suppression force, then let alone Rin and Naka, even Noah wouldn't dare to say that he could deal with it at full power. Curse pollution. Noah, who had calmed down, suddenly thought of something. Could it be? Did you notice it? Archer looked at Noah and bitterly smiled. That's right. Although he was known as the evil of this world, he was not a hero. Nor did he leave behind any great achievements in any myths or legends. Naturally, he did not have the strength that a heroic spirit should have. He was very weak and was killed not long after he was summoned. There was no need for Archer to explain the subsequent development. Noah could guess it. The soul of the defeated Avenger was absorbed by the Holy Grail. Because even the soul itself was absolutely evil, the Holy Grail was contaminated and became an existence that manifested the evil power. Understanding this, Noah took a deep breath. What will the polluted Holy Grail become? Archer looked at Noah and said word by word. You're the one who's going to die. It will become a vessel full of curses. Once it is summoned, a curse that no human can withstand will flow out and curse every human, until the curse covers the entire world. Although Rin and Osaka didn't understand the theory behind it, she still understood what Archer was trying to say. She took a deep breath. Even Noah could not help but be speechless. He did not expect that participating in a ritual that Gaia and Alea called entertainment would involve the life and death of all humans. Although I don't know if this world is the same, the Holy Grail War that I participated in was such an existence. Therefore, I gave up on the Holy Grail. Saying this, Archer's voice started to fade away. At this time, Noah and Rin and Osaka realized. Archer's body had almost disappeared. Archer. Rin and Osaka opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she chose to stop and closed her eyes. After a while, she opened her eyes with a gorgeous smile on her face. It doesn't matter if the Holy Grail is contaminated or not. What I have done will not change. I participated in this ceremony for the sake of victory. So, Archer, even if you leave here, I will not obediently admit defeat. I will take your share and obtain victory. Is that so? Archer suddenly smiled. His smile was very gentle. Then you are really reliable. Leaving behind these words, Archer's increasingly illusory body finally began to slowly dissipate. In the end, he completely disappeared from the spot. Archer leave. Rin and Osaka stared at the spot where her servant disappeared. She did not speak for a long time. Noah turned around and looked at Ludong Temple behind the mountain gate above the stone stairs. He then raised his head and looked at the sky. Rin and Osaka might not have heard it, but Noah did hear it. When Archer returned to the seat of heroes, a sentence entered Noah's ears. If you want to find Lancer, then go to the church. This was the last sentence that Archer left behind. At that moment, Noah's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. The church? Huh. Chapter 768. Bang! As soon as he returned home, Rin and Osaka seemed to have completely lost his strength. He fell on the sofa, and even his head was buried in the sofa. It was as if he could no longer move. Only a weak breathing sound could be heard. Noah, who came back with Rin and Osaka, glanced at Rin and Osaka but didn't say anything. Although he wasn't as good as Rin and Osaka, after tonight's battle, Noah also needed to think more about the future situation. After all, in just one night, 2 masters and 3 servants had already withdrawn from the Holy Grail War. Although Rin and Osaka didn't announce his withdrawal, he couldn't fight anymore after losing his servant. Unless he signed a contract with another servant, he could only be a spectator until the end of the Holy Grail War. Furthermore, because he still had the command seal, in order to prevent Rin and Osaka from returning, there might be other masters who would come to assassinate Rin and Osaka and kill the heir of the Osaka family. That might happen. Therefore, compared to Noah, Rin and Osaka must have more worries. As for Noah, he needed to carefully consider the 2 pieces of information left by Archer before he left. One was that the Holy Grail was likely to be contaminated. The other was the whereabouts of Lancer, who killed Archer. Excluding Rin and Osaka, there were a total of 4 groups of masters and servants. The masters that left were Gumu Soichiro and Caster. The servants that left were Archer, Caster, and Assassin. The remaining servants, in addition to Saber and Rider, were Lancer and Berserker. Berserker's master was determined to be Ilya, and Saber's master was Tamahira. Therefore, in the entire Holy Grail War, only Lancer's master hadn't appeared yet. In addition, there was also the person who killed Gumu Soichiro. Just who was that guy? This was also a problem. What are you going to do? Noah said as if nothing had happened. You're no longer a master. There's no need for you to participate in the war. For your own safety, it's better to seek refuge in the church. Don't even think about it. Rin and Osaka finally reacted. He lifted his head from the sofa and met Noah's gaze with a strong will. I've said it before. Even if Archer leaves, I won't admit defeat. Is that so? Noah smirked. In other words, you're going to find another servant who's alone to contract? Me too. Rin and Osaka finally had a bitter expression on his face. However, among the remaining servants, the Berserker is someone that cannot be negotiated with. It is impossible for him to choose to betray Iliasphère and sign a contract with me. Lancer is also the main culprit behind the destruction of Archer. Furthermore, his master has yet to appear, so I don't know if Lancer and his master are compatible. There is too little information, so he is basically not a contract target. Originally, signing a contract with Saber would be ideal. I lack a servant, and her master is unconscious and unable to fight. If we want to win, then the best choice is to sign a contract with her. Rin and Osaka sighed. However, I don't think that a knight like Saber would abandon her master and sign a contract with someone else. It's no different from betrayal, so Saber would definitely not do it. Rin and Osaka glanced at Noah. Or do you want me to target your rider? I have no objections. Noah shrugged. As long as you can do it. After hearing Noah's words, Rin and Osaka stared at him and did not say anything else. Being stared at by Rin and Osaka like this, Noah raised an eyebrow. You should be a smart person, so don't ask me why I didn't kill you to prevent another master from coming back. If you do, I'll probably have to reevaluate you. In the face of Gumu Soichiro, who had lost his ability to resist, Noah said that he didn't have any hobby of killing people. If Rin and Osaka asked this question again, then Noah would have to reevaluate Rin and Osaka's intelligence. Then I'll change the question. Rin and Osaka said calmly without any emotion. Is our partnership still going to continue? It was no wonder that Rin and Osaka would ask such a question. After all, cooperation was based on the fact that both sides had their own value. Now that Rin and Osaka had lost his servant, he had no way to compete with other masters. Under such circumstances, Rin and Osaka naturally lost the value of continuing to cooperate with him. In response, Noah asked back. Our partnership was originally to deal with Berserker. You were responsible for stalling for time, and I was responsible for using the time you bought to kill Berserker. Now that you don't have a servant, if you go up against Berserker, will you run away because of this? How is that possible? Rin and Osaka answered without hesitation. Didn't I say that even without Archer I won't admit defeat? Then isn't it fine? Noah said in an indifferent tone. The division of labor between us hasn't changed. If we need to deal with Berserker, you'll still be in charge. As long as you can buy time, everything else has nothing to do with me. Rin and Osaka went silent. After a long time, Sui-kun raised her head, and a beautiful smile slowly appeared on the face of the popular idol of Sui-kun Academy. You're really gentle. Noah frowned and protested. Why did you come to such a conclusion? Rin and Osaka ignored Noah's words. With a mischievous smile, he buried his head back into the sofa. He no longer looked as powerless as he did before. At this time, a shadow flew in from the window and landed on the floor of Rin and Osaka's living room with a loud clang. Rin and Osaka quickly raised his head again. When he saw who it was, his spirit was lifted. Saber. It was Saber, who went to chase after the mysterious person who killed Gumu Soichiro. How was it? Noah stepped forward and looked at Saber. Did you catch up? Saber glanced at Noah and Rin Enbin. After a while she shook her head. Not only did I not catch up, I didn't even see what the person looked like. I'm very sorry. Even Saber didn't catch up? Rin and Osaka was shocked. Does that mean that person is a servant? I'm not sure. Saber met Noah and Rin and Osaka's gaze. But I can feel a very strange magic. It doesn't seem like a human's magic. Doesn't seem like a human's magic. Rin and Osaka rubbed his chin. Since it's Saber's feeling, it shouldn't be wrong. The person used a gun to kill Gemi-sensei. Could it be a lancer? No. Noah denied Rin and Osaka's guess. Lancer's gun is a red magic gun. That gun is obviously too luxurious. It's definitely not Lancer's gun. Rin and Osaka and Saber looked at each other. If it wasn't Lancer, then who could it be? Berserker. Impossible. That guy had gone berserk. He didn't know how to speak or retreat. He only knew how to charge and didn't use a gun. Couldn't be him. If it wasn't Lancer, then who could it be? When Rin and Osaka and Saber fell into silence, Noah came to the window and looked at the night sky. He recalled Archer's last words. Thus Noah suddenly spoke. In Osaka, what kind of place is the church in Fuyuki? Chapter 769. The church. Noah's words startled Rin Enbin, and he couldn't help but ask curiously. Why are you asking about this? I'm a little concerned. Noah waved his hand perfunctorily. Also, as a master, I have never been to the church and have only seen the supervisor of this year's Holy Grail War. I don't know much about the church, but you seem to know a lot about it. So tell me more. Undoubtedly, you didn't go the last time I asked you to, and now you're bringing this up again. How suspicious. Rin Enbin stared at Noah for a while before continuing. If you want to ask about the supervisor of this year's Holy Grail War, although it wasn't my intention, I do know a lot about him. After all, he's my guardian. Guardian? Noah was surprised. The supervisor of the church is your guardian? I know it's strange, but the relationship between them is also very complicated. Rin Enbin said in a somewhat emotionless tone. That fake priest is indeed the supervisor of the Holy Grail War, but he's also related to the association that we magicians belong to. Rin Enbin paused for a while as if he was organizing his memories. After a while he explained to Noah. The current supervisor of the church used to be a member of the Holy Church. Later, he was sent to the Magic Association, and became my father's disciple. My father was in charge of teaching him magic knowledge and abilities. After my father passed away, He replaced my father and became my guardian because I couldn't be independent at that time. There's such a relationship. Noah scratched his cheek. In other words, other than the supervisor of the Holy Church, he's also a member of the Magic Association, and he's also your senior's guardian? That's why I said he's a fake priest. Rin Enbin obviously didn't have a good impression of his senior. Even his tone became a little harsh. Undoubtedly, the relationship between the Holy Church and the Magic Association is so bad. But that person was able to gain a foothold in both organizations and even became my father's disciple. However, thanks to this, after my father passed away, my magic was basically taught by him. In this aspect, I'll admit his value. Is that so? Noah nodded thoughtfully. What's the priest's name? Yen Fengqili. Rin in Osaka said the name directly. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and clapped his hands. That's right, that fake priest also participated in the last Holy Grail War as master. This sentence made Noah's heart skip a beat. The church's supervisor. That priest Yen Fengqili also participated in the Holy Grail War? That means he was already a master? At this moment, Noah finally remembered. On the second night after summoning Ryder, he seemed to have met Lancer outside the church, right? The more he thought about it, the more Noah felt that something was wrong. The more he thought about it, the more Noah was worried. In addition to the information left behind by Archer before he disappeared, Noah couldn't sit still anymore and immediately walked towards the door. Noah! Rin Enbin froze for a moment. Where are you going? Saber, who had been quietly listening to the conversation like a loyal guard, also asked in surprise. There are some things I care about. Noah didn't even turn his head and directly walked out of the hall. I'm going to the church. You guys can rest first, don't wait for me. After saying this, Noah's figure disappeared from Rin Enbin and Saber's sight. Aren't you going to follow him? Saber asked Rin Enbin. Maybe Noah found something? Even so, I don't have a servant anymore. Even if I follow him, I'll just be a burden. Rin Enbin stared blankly at the door and then turned to look at Saber. To prevent this from happening again, Saber, I need your help. Saber understood the meaning behind Rin Enbin's words. You want me to form a contract with you and become your servant? Saber looked directly at Rin Enbin. Rin, you should know that my master is still unconscious. Do you want me to give up on her and form a contract with you while she's unconscious? Although Saber didn't directly reject him, Rin Enbin already understood what Saber meant. It was obvious that Saber wouldn't form a contract with Rin Enbin under such circumstances. That would be no different from betrayal. I knew you would say that. Rin Enbin wasn't upset at all. Instead, he smiled. But Saber, we don't know when Sakura will wake up. If she continues to sleep like this, what are you going to do? If my master can't fight, then I, as the sword, will do, Saber replied without hesitation. Plus, I should be the one fighting. Sakura is someone I have to protect. It's fine even if I don't fight. But if you don't have a master, you'll be troubled too, right? Rin Enbin said. Do you want to fight alone until the end and obtain the Holy Grail yourself? Saber frowned when she heard this. Why did it sound like Saber was going to monopolize the Holy Grail? I know you're strong, but it's not good to fight alone. Rin Enbin finally made this suggestion. Coincidentally, I don't have a servant, and your master can't move. So why don't we form a team? A team? Saber seemed to understand Rin Enbin's intention. I don't have any desire for the Holy Grail. I just want to obtain the final victory, Rin Enbin said firmly. So, even if we don't have a contract, we can just form a team. I'll be your master, and you'll be my servant. Before Sakura wakes up, how about we maintain this relationship? Relationship, not contract, right? Saber finally understood. In other words, we're master and servant in name, right? That's right. Rin and Osaka smiled. How about it? Is this acceptable? Saber closed her eyes and fell into deep thought. Rin Enbin didn't rush her. He just sat there and waited for Saber's answer. After a long time, Saber finally opened her eyes and nodded. I understand, Rin. Before Sakura wakes up, we'll form a team and fight together. Hearing this, Rin and Osaka smiled in satisfaction. Nighttime, after leaving Enbin's house, Noah went straight to the church. Enbin's house was quite far from the church. In addition, it was the middle of the night. Noah walked in the dark towards the church. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. It was as if he was out for a walk. It looked like he was taking a leisurely walk, but in reality it was quite fast. As the night deepened, Noah climbed up a steep slope and finally arrived at the entrance of the church from a few days ago. Looking at the dark night, the church seemed to have opened its bloody mouth and was ready to swallow any intruders alive. This time Noah didn't just stand at the entrance. Instead, he pushed open the iron fence and walked in. Outside the church's chapel was a courtyard that looked a little shabby. Noah crossed the courtyard and came to the chapel. He reached out his hand and pushed the door open. Gotcha! With a slight but clear sound of the door opening, the full view of the church appeared in front of Noah's eyes. It was just an ordinary church. Long benches were lined up in an orderly manner. Silver moonlight shone through the windows. Wisps of fog-like smoke rose from the candles placed on the table at the front of the hall. Wisps of cold air lingered in the air. In this church, the back of a tall man wearing a priest's outfit appeared in Noah's vision. Looking at the priest, Noah slowly narrowed his eyes. Chapter 770. In the middle of the night, the chapel did not have the slightest hint of holiness. Instead, it gave off a sinister vibe. In such a sinister chapel at the very front, the priest holding a book did not seem to notice Noah's arrival at all. His head was still lowered, as if he was silently reciting the scriptures of the Bible. At least he looked quite pious. However, in this sinister chapel, the scene of a tall priest silently reciting scriptures was very strange no matter how one looked at it. If it was a timid person who saw this scene, they would definitely subconsciously have the idea of turning around and leaving, right? Not only did Noah not turn around and leave, but he pushed open the door and walked into the chapel without any disguise. Every step he took caused a clear sound of footsteps. He was upright, without the slightest bit of sneakiness. This made the chapel seem a little livelier. However, Noah did not directly walk towards the priest. Instead, after walking for a short distance, he stopped and did not make any further movements. An indescribable silence filled the chapel. The believers and visitors did not immediately make a sound. They only maintained the scene in front of them, causing the atmosphere to become quite strange. Although this was the first time they had met, and there was no obvious hostility between them, the scene in front of them gave people the feeling that a confrontation had already been going on in the dark, with swords drawn and bows drawn, and was extremely tense. Whoever broke the silence first would be the one at a disadvantage. It was just this kind of atmosphere. After an unknown amount of time had passed, the first round of confrontation ended with the priests admitting defeat. The sacred chapel will never reject any visitors. A low and gloomy voice came from the priest's body. However, you don't seem to have any reason to visit at this time, do you? Writer's master? The moment the voice fell, the priest put down the Bible in his hand, turned around and met Noah's gaze. The supervisor of the Holy Grail War, Yen Fengili. At this moment, the man called a fake priest by Rin Enbin looked at Noah with a pair of unfriendly eyes. It was as if he was looking at something unimportant. A smile appeared on his face, as if he had seen through everything. Most of the masters who come here are either here for help or for protection. Writer's master, what is your purpose for coming here? To the point. There was not the slightest hint of beating around the bush. The priest named Yen Fengili went straight to the point. He did not seem like a clergyman at all, which made people feel a sense of disgust. At this moment, Noah did not want to be outdone. He pursed his lips and smiled, and spoke without reservation. I have something to confirm, so I came here. Is that so? Yen Fengili put his hands behind his back and closed his eyes. Instead of calling him a priest, it would be better to call him an important member of the battle. It is my duty as a supervisor to help Master resolve his doubts regarding the Holy Grail War. I can't refuse your request. He made it sound as if he could not refuse because of his job, and not because he wanted to help Noah resolve his doubts. Yen Fengili said. Then, what do you want to confirm? What I want to confirm is very simple. Noah stared at Yen Fengili and shrugged. Excuse me, father, as long as one has the aptitude for magic, anyone can become a master, right? There is a misunderstanding in your question, Yen Fengili said calmly. It should be said that as long as one has the aptitude for magic, anyone can be chosen by the Holy Grail and become a master. Indeed. Noah nodded slowly. Then, does that include supervisors who know how to use magic? Yin Fengili opened his eyes and looked at Noah's half-smile. He actually smiled as well. Unfortunately, no matter which Holy Grail war it was, there was no precedent of a supervisor being chosen by the Holy Grail, including this one. There is also a misunderstanding in your answer. Noah's eyes flashed. Not being chosen is one thing, and not being able to become a master is another. Depriving a master of his command incantation, and robbing the master of his identity and rights, there should be many precedents in the Holy Grail wars of the past, right? The whole place suddenly fell silent. The smile on Yin Fengili's face disappeared little by little. His resolute face was expressionless as he looked straight at Noah. What are you trying to say? I don't think you are an idiot, father. Noah crossed his arms, and there was some pressure in his eyes. As one of the masters of the previous Holy Grail War, and the supervisor of this Holy Grail War, I don't think you are so ignorant of the rules of the Holy Grail War. In short, what you want to say is, did I steal the command incantation from another master and intervene in this Holy Grail War, and break the rules? Yin Fengili said calmly. Since you said so, it means that you have evidence to prove the truth of this matter, right? How could that be? Noah spread his hands helplessly. If I had solid evidence, then I wouldn't have come here alone to confirm it. I would have prepared for Saber and Ryder to attack this place together. Then I would have let Rin Dosaka see what kind of person her supervisor is. Oh! Yin Fengili suddenly smiled. In other words, you came here to question me without any preparation? That's right. Noah admitted generously and even kindly gave a suggestion. So, if there is a supervisor who wants to break the rules and intervene in the Holy Grail War, and wants to take me down, now is the best time to do so. You don't have to provoke me, Master of Ryder, Yin Fengili said expressionlessly as if he was facing a child who liked to play pranks. No matter what, I have no intention of killing you here. If this is your purpose, then please leave. After he finished speaking, Yin Fengili turned around and was about to pick up the Bible that he put on the table. However, his body suddenly froze and he suddenly turned around. Whoosh! At the same time, a fist carrying the whistling sound of the wind suddenly came from behind Yin Fengili and directly landed in the air. Yin Fengqi turned his body and dodged the punch. He clicked his tongue and looked at Noah, who had appeared in front of him at some point and was still in a punching posture. You actually attacked the supervisor. Are you not normal? Master of Ryder. You're wrong. It's because I'm too normal that I'm so easily affected by my emotions. Noah retracted his fist and turned around to look at Yin Fengili with a cold smile. You're right. I don't have any evidence to prove that you've broken the rules, and I'm not even sure that you're Master of Lancer. However, unfortunately, I don't have a good impression of priests. The priests that I've met in the past were either man-killer ghosts or crazy people. For someone like you who doesn't look like a priest at all and is full of evil energy, I think that using this method would be the easiest way to confirm what I want to confirm. After he finished speaking, Noah seemed to be mocking himself for letting his emotions affect his decisions, and a manic aura surged from his entire body. Within that aura, there was a trace of murderous intent. If you don't want to die, then struggle as much as you can. However, Noah's direct attack was like peeling off a corner of the mask that no one could see on Yin Fengili's face. A sinister smile appeared on Yin Fengili's resolute face. I see. As expected of the master who can go head-to-head with a servant. You're full of confidence in your own conjectures. Then there's no need to beat around the bush. You have the demeanor of a magician, Noah Doria. Have you gathered sufficient information about me? Noah extended a palm in Yin Fengili's direction. In that case, let me see what you're capable of. The moment he finished speaking, a beautiful magical formation appeared in front of Noah's palm. Light illuminated the church. Chapter 771. OM. In the dark night, inside the church that was rippling with an ominous aura, a strong light suddenly shone through the window and the crack of the door. It was as if something had soared up, illuminating the entire church. Boom! Immediately afterward, accompanied by a heavy explosion, with the church's door as the center, the wall in front of the building burst open, and a huge beam of light shot out from the inside, directly passing through the courtyard in front of the church. After blasting the iron fence, It rubbed against the ground and shot into the distance. Under the attack of this huge beam of light, a figure seemed to be abruptly pushed out, flew upside down and fell heavily on the ground after making a muffled groan. He turned over and kneeled on one knee, awkwardly rubbing against the ground for some distance before stopping. Qi! A trace of light smoke rose from his body, making Yan Fengqi kneeling on one knee on the ground. The priest's attire on his body looked like it was on fire, and there were traces of scorch everywhere. However, Yan Fengqi didn't care about his own embarrassment. His eyes were fixed on the front. Duh. Under the gaze of Yan Fengqi, the wall in front of him was directly destroyed without leaving a trace, and inside the church, a figure slowly walked out with clear footsteps. Around Noah's body, as if there were cannons floating around him, a precise geometric pattern moved along with Noah's movement. Surrounding Noah's body, there was a burst of amazing magic power, making the whole space filled with an oppressive atmosphere. Looking at Yan Fengqi, who was kneeling on one knee on the ground and staring at him, Noah raised his eyebrows. You're really worthy of being able to stand firmly in both the magic association and the Holy Church at the same time. That attack just now almost forced Castor to leave the stage. Even after taking that attack, you didn't suffer any obvious damage. You're quite capable. After saying such a sentence, Noah raised his hand again. As if he was giving orders, he waved his hand gently. An intricate geometrical pattern in the space around Noah suddenly trembled, and the astonishing magic power that lingered within suddenly converged. Yan Fengqi, who had already seen Noah's magic cannon once, suddenly jumped up and rolled to the side without caring about his image. The next moment, a beam of light made of magic power burst out from the magic array, crossing the space, carrying a dazzling light and a strong impact, and fell on the position where Yan Fengqi was a second ago. Bang! An amazing big explosion was stirred up from the courtyard in front of the church, bringing terrible wind and fire in all directions. Although Yan Fengqi escaped the direct attack, he was still affected by the wind and fire. His whole body was like it was hit by something heavy. He once again hit the ground and rolled uncontrollably. However, this time, Yan Fengqi did not choose to adjust his posture. Instead, he simply took advantage of the wind and rolled on the ground. He stomped on the ground with one foot, making his whole body spin like a top. With a turn, he rushed to Noah's side. Ha! With a loud shout, Yan Fengqi clenched his hands into fists. His fists were like iron hammers, following his spinning body in an arc, and punched directly in Noah's direction. However, almost at the same time, Noah raised a fist with a cold smile and pulled it behind him. In the vibration of the air, his whole fist was covered by a golden vortex of air, bringing with it an ear-piercing whistling sound as it met Yan Fengqi's fist. Bang! With a heavy muffled sound, the strength chi caused by the collision of the two fists spread out like ripples. Noah's body trembled slightly. Then, he dispelled the force of Yan Feng's punch that was aimed at him. However, Yan Fengqi was sent flying by the terrifying impact of Noah's annihilation strike. Amidst the chaotic sounds of footsteps, he finally managed to stabilize himself with great difficulty. After a brief exchange of blows, Noah was clear about the situation. Regardless of Yan Fengqi's ability in magic in close combat, his fist technique was probably not inferior to Gumu Zangakiro's. The difference was that Gumu Zangakiro's fist technique was born for surprise attacks, and was too strange and unpredictable. Yan Fengqi's fist technique was rather orthodox, and did not have any obvious weaknesses. Unfortunately, if that's the case, then he can only struggle. As soon as he finished speaking, the magic formations around Noah lit up one after another, gathering a strong magical power. Seeing this, Yan Fengqi's body tensed up, and his expression was grave. Only those who had actually faced Noah knew how difficult it was to deal with Noah, who had turned into a mobile cannon. When dealing with the servants, because most of the servants basically had magical skills, Noah's magic cannon didn't play any role at all. It could only be reduced to a decoration. When he first faced Castor, Noah's magic cannon almost sent the opponent back to the seat of heroes. It was enough to show how powerful this magic was because of Noah. Otherwise, later, Castor wouldn't specifically guard against Noah's magic. Now the opponent was not a servant with magical skills or a magician from the gods' generation. Noah's magic cannon finally showed its true power. The moment the familiar trembling sound sounded, a magical beam with a strong light and a terrible impact swept out and blasted in the direction of Yanfeng Qili. Bang! There was another huge explosion. The magic beam that landed on the ground stirred up a gust of wind that shook the surroundings. Once again, Yanfeng and Qili, who had leaped out of the way at the last moment, were blown away. They rolled on the ground for the umpteenth time. Yanfeng Qili, who was still rolling on the ground, didn't have time to get up. The trembling sound that made people's heart shrink fiercely finally made Yanfeng Qili's pupils finally shrank to the size of a needle tip. If this continues, Yanfeng Qili will only be forced to a dead end by the continuous bombardment of the magic cannon. Yanfeng Qili, who understood his situation, could only click his tongue. He put his hand into his arms and pulled out several red tools that looked like daggers. Between his 5 fingers, he tightened his grip, and from the tip of the handle, a sharp blade popped out. Immediately, Yanfeng Qili fiercely rolled, his figure jumped up, and with a swing of his hand, the weapons in his hand were like arrows, cutting through the air, and directly shot in the direction of Noah. Seeing this, Noah was slightly surprised, but he didn't have the slightest hesitation. His body tensed up, and a dense magical energy immediately emerged from his body. In the end, it lingered around Noah's body, causing waves of magical aura to shake off from Noah's body. The numerous sharp weapons that turned into arrows quickly flashed over, and viciously shot towards Noah's throat, heart, limbs, abdomen and head respectively. The attack of every weapon was aimed at the goal of killing. However, when the weapons with the cold white tips on their blades violently shot over, and landed on the magical aura that lingered around Noah's body, it seemed to have encountered a major obstacle. Even if they penetrated the magical aura, the speed of the shooting became slower and slower. In just a short while, the sharp weapons that were shot out seemed to have lost their strength in a swamp. Before they could even touch Noah's body, they slowed down one after another, and fell to the ground with crisp sounds. Without giving Yanfeng Qili any chance to react, a magical array around Noah rotated, and a burst of dazzling magical light burst out, causing the magical light to turn into a beam of light. Following a straight trajectory, it violently landed in the direction of Yanfeng Qili amidst the vibrations in the air. The violent impact and flames were set off. This time Yanfeng Qili was hit directly because he dodged too hastily. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body flew out. After rubbing against the ground for more than 10 meters, he slowly came to a stop. Is this the end? Amidst Noah's sarcastic voice, the fatal magical light beam fell. The sound of the explosion resounded throughout the night sky of the church. Chapter 772. Boom! When the gigantic magic light beam suddenly landed in the courtyard in front of the church, setting off stormy waves of impact and dense flames that soared into the sky, completely covering Yanfeng and Qili's bodies, Noah's expression did not show the slightest bit of happiness. Instead, it darkened slightly. After being bombarded by Noah's magic cannon several times, there was basically no place in the courtyard in front of the church that was unscathed. There were either deep holes in the ground, or the stone bricks on the surface had been blown off, leaving only a layer of black soil. It was as though the ground had been charred by a fire, and traces of smoke were everywhere. In such a messy place, the shock waves and intense flames that had just been stirred up began to slowly dissipate. Not long after, a figure appeared in the center of the flames. However, it was not Yanfeng Qili's figure. At this moment, Yanfeng Qili was still lying on the ground with blood at the corner of his mouth. He had been protected by the person who had suddenly appeared and escaped the disaster. Noah had more or less expected this outcome. Regardless of whether it was the conclusion made by his own speculation or the fact that a figure had suddenly barged into the area covered by Noah's sensing ability after the magic cannon fired and protected Yanfeng and Qili, the result was obvious. Hence, Noah laughed coldly. "You're finally willing to appear? Lancer's servant?" The newcomer was none other than Lancer. Holding the familiar crimson magic spear, Lancer first glanced at Yanfeng Qili, who was lying on the ground behind him, clutching his chest and continuously coughing out blood. Then, he turned his gaze back to Noah with a helpless expression on his face. He still attacked." This sentence indicated that Lancer had actually been observing the situation from the side. However, Lancer did not seem to have any intention of interfering in the beginning. He did not even enter the area covered by Noah's sensing ability, so Noah did not discover him. Now, Lancer's appearance had confirmed Noah's speculation. There was no doubt that Yin Fengqili was Lancer's master. In other words, as the supervisor of the Holy Grail War, Yin Fengqili really interfered in the Holy Grail War and made an example of violating the rules like Castor. Yin Fengqili clutched his chest and struggled to get up. He didn't look at Lancer in front of him and stared straight at Noah, who was opposite him. His face was a little pale because of his serious injury. I didn't expect that you were really going to kill me. Didn't you think about what would happen to you if I didn't violate the rules? What? Will someone avenge you? Or will the Holy Grail give me a punishment? Don't tell me you're trying to say that you've offended the Magic Association and the Holy Church? Noah said sarcastically. I'm sorry, but no matter what the consequences are, I'm not afraid of anything. Oh, Yin Fengqili tried to straighten his back and also sneered. Originally, because you didn't have any hostility to the rest of the masters, and you even saved Tong Ying and didn't do anything to Ling who lost his servant, I thought you were just a naive boy. I didn't expect that even if there was the possibility of being wronged by you, you would not hesitate to kill me. I admit that my evaluation of you is too one-sided. No, your evaluation is basically correct. I don't have any desire for the Holy Grail, and I don't participate in this ceremony with some kind of mission like Yuansaka. So, I'll turn a blind eye to the other masters if I find them pleasing to the eye. If I don't find them pleasing to the eye, I'll teach them a lesson or even kill them. I won't be hostile to the other masters just because of this ceremony, Noah said with a smile that wasn't a smile. You are the same. Hearing this, Yin Fengqili narrowed his eyes. In other words, what caused you to be hostile towards me? Well, it's okay if you interpret it that way. Noah pursed his lips. Who asked you to have the exact same feeling as the two murderers and psychopathic priests I met? In fact, the moment he entered the church and saw Yin Fengqili, Noah's impression of Yin Fengqili dropped to the lowest. There was no other reason than the feeling Yin Fengqili gave Noah was too similar to when Bingyong Li and Fried that he met before. Although it was just a feeling, the more Noah talked with Yin Fengqi and Qili, the more he felt that Yin Fengqi and Qili were the same as when Bingyong Li and Fried. They were a group of people with completely flawed values. They were definitely not good people. That was why Noah chose to make a move in such a domineering manner. Reality proved that Noah's feeling was right. Yin Fengqili was indeed not a good person. How do you feel? Yin Fengqili closed his eyes and said such a sentence. I thought that if this continues when I reveal my true identity, it should be at the end of the Holy Grail War. But now I've been exposed ahead of time. I thought that when I reveal my identity, it must be in front of Ling. That way, Ling's expression will be very interesting. Hearing Yin Fengqili's words, Noah also had a deep question in his heart. He remembered that when he first fought with Castor, Castor said that because Lancer's master wanted a little girl, he sent Lancer to cooperate with Castor. So far, there was only one person who would be called a little girl by Castor. At that moment, Noah asked, Are you thinking about Nagasaka? Idea. Yin Fengqili smiled, and his smile was unusually happy. If it's because I want to see what kind of interesting reaction Ling will have when he learns the truth, then I am indeed thinking about it. Yin Fengqili's smile directly made Noah's mood become very bad. The truth? It doesn't matter if I tell you. Yin Fengqili's mouth evoked an unpleasant arc. I just want to know what kind of expression Ling will have when she learns that her father died in my hands. Hearing this sentence, Noah was shocked. You killed Nagasaka's father? I can't help it, he is my teacher. Yin Fengqili laughed more and more unscrupulously. As a disciple who needs to follow behind the mentor, that man's back has been exposed to me too many times. I can't help but want to go forward and stab him with a knife. As a result, I couldn't help but become like this. In the last Holy Grail War, Ling Nagasaka's father, as the head of the Nagasaka family, attended the ceremony as one of the masters, but he died very suddenly. Noah also knew about this matter. So that's how it is. Noah looked at Yin Fengqili's eyes became cold. Was it because you plotted against him that Nagasaka's father died so suddenly? What? You don't have any reason to be angry, do you? Or rather, you should be happy. Yin Fengqili opened his hands, as if he was going to promote some theory, and spat out a calm and slightly deranged voice. After all, it was that man who sent one of his daughters into Jiantong's family, and almost fed her to the worms. Don't you love that child of the Jiantong family very much? You should be satisfied with this result, right? What a disgusting guy. As expected, no priest is a good person. I can completely confirm this matter. Looking at the joyful smile on Yan Fengqili's face, Noah's expression gradually calmed down. Forget it. Since my question has been answered, you should obediently leave the stage. With that, Noah lifted his feet and slowly walked in the direction of Yan Fengqili. Seeing this, Yan Fengqili did not say a word. He immediately turned around, clutched his chest, and ran out of the church. Noah watched as Yan Fengqili left. Just as he was about to chase after them, a careless voice rang in his ears, causing him to stop in his tracks. Hey, don't chase after him. How about you play with me here? Chapter 773. Hey, don't chase after him. How about you stay here and play with me? Noah stopped in his tracks and looked at Yan Fengqili, who was gradually running away. He clicked his tongue and looked at Lancer with a sharp gaze. What are you doing? Lancer asked in a relaxed and carefree voice. What are you doing? Huh? Lancer, who had endured Noah's sharp gaze, did not retreat at all. Instead, he spoke excitedly. Not bad. There are people in this era with such eyes. It really makes one's blood boil. Seeing Lancer's eyes and expression filled with a strong desire to fight, Noah roughly understood what kind of person Lancer was. Battle maniac? I hate this kind of person the most. Noah looked straight at Lancer and declared, Are you going to stop me no matter what? Lancer. I'm sorry, kid. Lancer held the magic spear in his hand tightly and shrugged helplessly. Even if he's that kind of person, he's still my master. Without him, I can't continue to exist. So, it's better if you stay here and accompany me. Is that so? Noah closed his eyes slightly and then suddenly opened them. Then let me prepare a worthy opponent for you. After saying this, Noah raised one hand and turned the back of his hand towards Lancer. Lancer was shocked. Don't tell me you're planning to. Without giving Lancer a chance to react, Noah raised his hand high above his head and chanted loudly, Come here. Rider. This sentence directly turned into the purest of orders and resounded under the night sky of the church. Clang! On the back of Noah's hand, the sword-shaped command incantation, surrounded by two snakes, suddenly lit up and brought with it a rich red light. In the blink of an eye, one of the snakes on the command incantation suddenly faded away and gradually became blurry. The command incantation, which had become indistinct, directly turned into a huge amount of magic power. It rippled and reverberated to the surroundings, causing the space around Noah to suddenly become illusory. Then, a dazzling light burst out from the illusory space. A tall and slender figure appeared in the middle of it. Ryder, who was holding a spike-like chain dagger, raised his head that was wearing an eye patch. With his back facing Noah, he looked at Lancer opposite him and a strong magic wave was emitted from his body. Ryder's servant, here following the summons. As if he didn't see Lancer, Ryder turned around and looked at Noah. Master, please give me your orders. Orders? Noah smiled faintly. No orders, Ryder. This time do as you like it. Make as much trouble as you want. Hearing this, Ryder tightened his grip on the chain dagger and a bright smile that was usually expressionless. Understood, Master. Noah crouched down like a cheetah and chased after Yan Fengqili as soon as he received Ryder's reply. Stop right there. Kid. Lancer naturally couldn't just watch as Noah chased after Yan Fengqili. He turned around, but before he could make a move, a strong gust of wind came from behind him. His expression changed slightly and he quickly turned his body sideways. Swoosh! In the sharp sound of the wind breaking, the spike-like dagger connected to the chain brushed past Lancer's body. Like an arrow that pierced through space, it shot out and landed in the air. However, at the same time, an aura suddenly approached Lancer and flashed behind him. Clang! The crisp sound of the collision and the bursting of sparks shook the air. That was the sound caused by the fierce collision between the red magic spear and the chain dagger. The body of the magic spear and the spike-like dagger constantly rubbed against each other, creating strong sparks. Under such circumstances, Ryder raised his head. Although his eyes were covered by a shield, when Lancer met his gaze that shouldn't have existed, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. Then Ryder smiled. His smile was like a rose with thorns full of danger. "Let's fight, Lancer." Hearing this, Lancer also smiled. His smile was rather ferocious. "All right, I've been waiting for this day for a long time." Violent magic power rose from the two servants, and the tension in the air was instantly ignited. Clang! Then the loud sound of metal clashing reverberated in the air and didn't die down for a long time. Swoosh! On the other side, Noah, who had Ryder in charge of delaying Lancer, turned into a shadow and flashed under the moonlight. Like a ghost, he rushed into a forest at his fastest speed. Within the range of Noah's sensing ability, he could still sense Yenfengili's aura. Perhaps because he was injured, Yenfengili couldn't escape from the range of Noah's sensing ability in time. This was also the most unlucky thing about Yenfengili. It was destined that tonight would be the most unforgettable and unbearable night for him. Following the remnant aura within the range of his sensing ability, Noah constantly shuttled through the lush forest. His body was extremely nimble as he leaped over the trees. At a speed that could only be seen as a shadow, he sprinted in a certain direction. Swoosh! Just as Noah was about to catch up with the aura in front of him, a weapon that was as sharp as a dagger or a short sword suddenly shot out from the front. It cut through the air, and with a sharp sound it accurately pierced towards Noah's body. It was a weapon that Yenfengili had used once in his battle with Noah. It could eject a blade from the dagger-like hilt. It was said that under normal circumstances, only members of the Church of Holy Light would use this weapon. It was a weapon called the Black Key. In terms of swords, this weapon wasn't refined enough, and its sharpness couldn't be compared to ordinary swords. However, in terms of length, it was a weapon that was very suitable for throwing. Moreover, this weapon had a miraculous effect on spiritual bodies. The blade of the sword was weaved with magic. As long as there was a hilt, it could be carried on one's body at any time. When it was time to use it, it could be taken out. The blade of the sword weaved with magic could be used in battle. It was a very convenient and miraculous weapon. If this weapon was used against a servant, as long as it could hit, it would be able to cause damage. It was a pity that Noah wasn't a spiritual body. To Noah, Yenfengili's Black Key was no different from ordinary daggers and short swords. Pung! Immediately, a violent and dense magic burst out from Noah's body. It was like a shockwave that blew in all directions. Dang 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 dang. The black keys that were shooting towards Noah were directly blown away by the magic storm that burst out from Noah's body. It was as if they had landed on a steel shield, and they were all knocked away. From this, it could be seen that in terms of power, these black keys were indeed somewhat lacking. The appearance of these black keys was equivalent to telling Noah Yenfengili was right in front of him. Along with the dense magic wave, Noah's eyes flashed with a hint of sharpness. He turned around and stomped on the trunk of a tree. His entire body turned into an arrow and shot out rapidly, flashing forward. Not long after, in the field of vision in front, a figure wearing a priest's outfit, covering his chest and fleeing in a sorry state, was imprinted in Noah's eyes. As if he had sensed the movement behind him, Yenfengili turned around with all his might. However, there was not a single figure behind Yenfengili. This result not only did not make Yenfengili feel relieved at all, instead he was shocked. He turned around abruptly and looked in the direction that he was fleeing in. There, a figure quietly landed on the ground. Yenfengili's face darkened. Yenfengili's intuition told him that it was him. There was really no way for him to escape today. Escape? Noah revealed a cold smile. Do you think you can escape? Fake priest. Chapter 774. Whoosh! The mana waves that continued to rise from Noah's body were like a gust of wind that rolled up the dead branches and rotten leaves on the ground in the silent forest at night. It was as though a tornado was wantonly venting its power. It was quite a shocking sight. Even Yenfengchi couldn't help but take a step back when he saw this scene. At this time, what filled Yenfengchi's heart wasn't fear but shock. Ever since he was in the church, Noah had used the mana cannons made of pure mana more than once. That kind of magic seemed simple, but because of its simplicity, its power was directly related to the amount of magic. From the power of the magic cannon, it could be seen that even if it was just a single shot, the amount of magic it required was quite shocking. However, from start to finish, Noah had used the magic cannon countless times, but it didn't seem like it was going to be used up at all. Moreover, now, he was using the most direct method to display his magic in front of him. How could Yan Fengqi not be shocked? Could it be that this person's magic was boundless? Even the heroic spirits who stood out from the legends didn't have this level of magic. How did this master, who came out of nowhere, have this level of magic power? If he had this level of magic, he shouldn't be unknown in this world. The Magic Association, which paid the most attention to magic, should have noticed, right? Magic was the root of mystery. Even the ritual of the Holy Grail was built on the foundation of the endless magical power in Fuyuki City. It was easy to imagine how important magic was. Therefore, if he had this level of magic power, he would definitely be noticed by the Magic Association. However, Yan Fengqi, who had a firm foothold in both the Holy Church and the Magic Association, didn't know of this person's existence. This made Yan Fengqi involuntarily grit his teeth and speak. "You, who are you?" "What?" Noah lifted his feet and slowly walked towards Yan Fengqi. In the end, is this the only question in your heart?" From Noah's words, Yan Fengqi felt a real murderous intent. The person in front of him was indeed planning to kill Yanfeng and Qili. That was why he chased after them. Yan Fengqi didn't know that Noah would directly kill someone he met for the first time. That was a very rare thing. Yan Fengqi, who didn't know this, pulled out the black key with a sullen face. Clang! The sharp blade of the black key, which looked like a dagger's hilt, flashed with a cold light. Instead of retreating, Yanfeng Qili advanced. With a shift of his feet, his figure instantly turned into a black shadow and shot toward Noah like a bolt of lightning. His sharp black key easily cut through the air with the help of magic power. Of the black keys of the black key. Facing Black Key's merciless attack, Noah's eyes flickered slightly. He kicked off the ground with the tip of his foot and picked up a withered branch, holding it in his hand. The complicated and precise magic patterns, which looked like electric wires, suddenly spread out from Noah's hand and climbed up the black key's black key. The magic patterns covered the entire surface of the black key. Facing the incoming sharp Heijian, the withered branch in Noah's hand turned into an afterimage as it flashed out. With a frightening momentum, it heavily struck Heijian's sword like an egg smashing into a rock. Clang! The rotting branches clashed with the sharp black keys, and the sound of steel clashing against steel rang out. After his attack was blocked by Noah, Yan Fengili immediately flicked his wrist. The sharp black key was like a strange poisonous snake, as it quickly circled around the rotten withered branch that was covered with the magic pattern of enhanced magic. With a turn, it cut across the surface of the withered branch and stabbed forward. Ding! Just as the sharp black key flashed past the black key that had been strengthened by the black key, a hand suddenly stretched out rapidly. With a flick of the finger, a gust of magic wind was brought up and it accurately bounced off Yan Fengqi's black key. At the same time, Noah raised the black key in his hand and stabbed it directly at Yan Fengqi's face. The tip of the black key enlarged in his eyes. Yan Fengqi's heart tightened as he tilted his body and somersaulted in the air to dodge the black key's black key. Immediately after, Yan Fengqili's eyes suddenly became sharp. Magic power surged from the black key, causing the sword made of magic power to tremble violently. Following the trembling of the black key, the afterimages of the black key filled the space in front of Yan Fengqi within a few breaths. This was caused by Yan Fengqi stabbing the black key in his hand at an astonishing speed. As a result, the rain-like sword shadows filled Noah's entire vision. Like a downpour, they enveloped Noah's body from all directions. Faced with this scene, Noah's gaze was calm. He raised the black key in his hand and slowly drew a trajectory that was difficult to follow before he stabbed it out with extreme agility. Ding! A light sound of collision rang out. Noah's black key met the black key amidst the overwhelming sword shadows. It collided with the tip of the black key's black key and stopped the continuous stabs. Yan Fengqi's expression changed slightly, but he could only grit his teeth and shake his other arm. The other black key immediately landed in Yan Fengqi's hand. The black key flicked out and turned into a sword shadow. With a trail of silver light, it directly stabbed towards Noah's throat. However, this time before the sharp black key could pierce Noah's body, Noah's hand that was holding the rotten black key suddenly twisted strangely. Like a python that had wrapped around its prey, it tightly sucked onto Yan Fengqi's black key. With a forceful tug, Yan Fengqi lost his balance and fell forward. Whoosh! Almost instantaneously, a fist that was accompanied by a whistling sound of the wind suddenly flashed out. It was mixed with a terrifying force and violently blasted towards Yan Fengqi. Yan Fengqi's expression changed again and again. He could only give up on the black key that was strangely sucked in. He also clenched his fist and tried his best to gather his magic power. He gathered it on his fist and pressed it against the fist that was bombarding towards him. Boom! When the fists collided, a muffled sound and the impact of the strength chi shook the forest, causing the two figures who were exchanging punches to suddenly retreat. Wang! Immediately after, a gorgeous magic array rotated in front of one of the figures. A terrifying demonic power that would make anyone tremble in fear gathered in the magic array, condensing into a brilliant beam of light, and shot out like a flood. Yan Fengqi, who clearly understood the power of the light beam, could only shrink his eyes and feel a wave of fear in his heart. This was because Yan Fengqi was still unable to stabilize his body, and was in a state of retreating. There was no way he could avoid the light beam that was shot at close range. Therefore, this time, the magic wind beam did not deviate and directly landed on Yan Fengqi's body. Boom! The shocking explosion thundered through the entire forest. Even outside the forest it could be heard clearly. At this moment, in a corner of the forest, a scorching red fire burst out like a wave of fire that set the prairie ablaze. It was like a violent storm that burst out from the middle. All the trees in the area that were affected by the scorching fire were swallowed by the spreading fire almost in the blink of an eye and directly caught fire. The entire corner of the forest turned into a red lotus hell. It had completely turned into a sea of fire. The figure that was directly hit by the magic wind beam that caused all this was scorched black and his skin festered as if he had been calcined by the fire. Poochie! With a mouthful of red blood spurting out, Yan Fengqi's body, which was scorched black and smoking, fell powerlessly like a bird that had its wings broken and crashed heavily into the deep pit on the ground. There was not a single spot that was intact, and his breath was almost gone. Noah, who had retreated to the edge of the sea of fire, saw this scene. Even though he did not have any good feelings for Yan Fengqi and only had disgust and killing intent in his heart, he would not be stingy with his praise at this time. After all, it was already very praiseworthy that Yan Fengqi did not shatter into pieces after taking a full hit from the magic wind beam that could even directly annihilate a low-level fallen angel. Although this praise was exchanged for with Yan Fengqi's life. Chapter 775. Pa! The prairie fire continued to expand in the forest, causing the trees to burn one after another. Some of them had even turned into charred wood and fell to the ground with a crisp sound, creating dense sparks. In the center of the sea of fire there was a huge pit. Yan Fengqi's entire body was charred black, and even his skin was festering. He could not even feel his breath as he lay motionless in the pit. If it weren't for Noah's outstanding sensing ability, he would not have been able to detect the remaining trace of weak breath. Faced with such a scene that could be called a red lotus hell, Noah did not feel the slightest emotional fluctuation in his heart. He slowly walked into the center of the sea of fire, and into the deep pit created by the explosion of the magic cannon. He arrived in front of Yan Fengqi and looked down at him from above. No matter what kind of creature it is, they are all bound by things like rules. Just like the top and bottom of the food chain, those at the bottom will only end up being devoured by those at the top. Therefore, people will instinctively feel agitated when they break the rules. Such people usually do not have a good ending. Yan Fengqi, this is your ending. Yan Fengqi seemed to have heard Noah's voice. He tried his best to lift his completely blurred face, and even his expression could not be seen clearly. He spoke weakly. Noah. Dole. That's right, that's my name, Noah sneered. Remember it well. Don't die without knowing who took your life. Noah raised the rotten withered branch in his hand that was covered with magical patterns, and strengthened by the strengthening spell. It was not inferior to ordinary sharp weapons at all. Goodbye, imposter priest. After saying that, Noah suddenly stabbed down with the withered branch covered with magical patterns in his hand. Whoosh! However, at this moment, a sharp sound of something breaking through the air was heard, causing Noah's hand to stop moving. He immediately switched from stabbing to flicking, causing the rotten withered branch to look like a full moon as it streaked across the space in front of him. Clang! Accompanied by a resounding sound of metal clashing and a burst of sparks, a luxurious sword that had suddenly shot over from afar and pierced towards Noah's heart was fiercely sent flying. Bang! At the same time, the rotten branch in Noah's hand exploded into pieces due to the clash with the luxurious sword. The remaining force pushed Noah back involuntarily and away from Yanfeng and Chili. This development caused Noah, who was retreating, to narrow his eyes. The same thing had happened not long ago. They did not appear within the range of Noah's sensing ability, but they launched an attack by throwing weapons at him. When Castor left the game, Gumu Soichiro died in such a situation. Although it was a gun last time and a sword this time, Noah did not think that the two situations were not caused by the same person. At the moment, Noah, who had stabilized his body, raised his head and looked at the direction of the luxurious sword. At this moment, a breath finally appeared within the range of Noah's sensing ability. "Are you looking at my body at will without my permission?" When such an unruly voice echoed over the entire sea of fire, a figure quietly walked out from the other side of the sea of fire. "Well, although you are a bastard of unknown origin, you are still a guy who can confront Hercules head-on. I admit your value." With such a sentence, a blond man with his hand in his pocket appeared in front of Noah with a cold and arrogant smile on his face. Seeing the blond man, Noah's eyes narrowed again. "It's you?" He was wearing a black motorcycle suit. A chain-like ornament was wrapped around his waist. His hair color was bright golden. His pupils were as red as wine. This guy was clearly the mysterious blond man who suddenly appeared in front of Noah at night last time and mentioned Tonging in front of Noah. Yanfeng Chili also turned his head with difficulty and looked in the direction of the blond man. After a while he squeezed out such a name. Gilgamesh. Chili? The man called Gilgamesh by Yanfeng Chili glanced at the blackened man who was lying on the ground and had almost no breath. The expression on his face became ridiculing. "I just left for a while and you actually became like this, Chili. This time you lost your mind." Yanfeng Chili seemed to want to say something, but because his movements were too big, dark red blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth, causing him to be unable to even cough. He could only continuously bleed like a corpse that was about to die. "Seems that you can't do it anymore." Gilgamesh smiled as if he was helpless and indifferent at the same time. "Forget it anyway. I have found something more interesting to do here. Thank you very much for accompanying me for so long. I had a great time, Chili." After saying that, Gilgamesh turned his gaze to Noah, who was opposite him, as though he was looking at something interesting. Then he suddenly laughed out loud. "This is the first time we have met like this, right? Writer's Master?" Hearing this, Noah still looked straight at Gilgamesh and after a while he spoke. "Who are you?" "Who am I?" Gilgamesh slightly widened his eyes, then covered his forehead, as if he was amused, and laughed out loud. "I have already allowed you to admire my figure, but you still didn't recognize who I am? And you even question me? Ha 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 ha." Gilgamesh's laughter suddenly stopped, and a cruel emotion appeared in his wine-like eyes. "A guy who can't even recognize the king doesn't need my mercy." As soon as he finished his words, clank! Wave-like golden ripples suddenly reverberated in the space around Gilgamesh. At this moment, a message suddenly appeared in Noah's mind. Profession rank: Archer Master. Yanfeng Chili real name: Gilgamesh attribute: Chaos good. Ability value: Strength, B durability, C agility, C magic power, B luck. A noble phantasm, X profession skill. Magic power, A is one of the 3 knights in the Holy Grail War. Because of the profession rank of archer, he had obtained this skill, but in fact, he did not have the ability to deal with magic power, so he could only stay at the lowest level, level E. Although the level was low because he had a variety of magic armors, he could actually nullify most magic. Solo action. A plus as an archer's servant, they would usually be given the ability to act alone. However, in the archer job class it was very rare for them to have this level of ability to act alone. They had already surpassed the highest level of A rank. Even without the help of a master, they would still be able to act. Even when using large-scale magic, the support of a master would become unnecessary. They would be able to completely ignore their master and act at will. Furthermore, as a servant who had obtained a physical body, even after the end of the Holy Grail War, they would still be able to continue to maintain the Earth realm. Preservation skill. Golden rule. With the fate of being entangled with wealth in his life, he would not be confused by the problem of money in his life. From the beginning to the end, he would live a rich life, because there was a legend that all the treasures in the world in the era of survival were his own. He even had a treasure house to keep all the noble phantasms. This skill seemed to have nothing to do with combat, but in the aspect of equipment, this skill actually played a great role. Leadership ability. A plus with excellent command and leadership ability, he had the ability to be praised as the best king. This was a very rare skill. Generally speaking, if you want to rule a kingdom, as long as you have level B, it was enough. Reaching level A+ was already beyond popularity or technology. It could be said to be the level of magic or curse, so even just leading would greatly improve the morale. Divinity. B+. Even among the heroic spirits, he had the highest level of divine fitness. His divinity even surpassed that of the son of the Greek main god. After his death, he even became a true god, Hercules. Unfortunately, although he had such a high level of divine fitness, he still hated the gods, resulting in his level being reduced to B. Chapter 776. The sudden feedback in his mind made Noah completely fall into a state of shock. It seems that Gilgamesh's sudden attack stimulated Noah's ability as a master, allowing Noah to spy on Gilgamesh's ability value. But what's going on? Archer. Isn't the archer of this Holy Grail War Rin Inosaka's servant? What's going on with this archer in front of me? Moreover, up until now, the 7 servants of this year's Holy Grail War have all appeared, haven't they? The second archer? The 8th servant? Master or Yenfingili? Yenfingili has 2 servants? What the hell is going on? Oh, you have an interesting expression? Gilgamesh, who was surrounded by golden space ripples, seemed to have seen through the bewilderment in Noah's heart. He spoke in amusement. Are you wondering why there is an 8th servant? Rider's master? With such a sneer, Gilgamesh said proudly, "Unfortunately, that's something that only those who can survive are qualified to know. You can try to survive in my hands. In that case, I can still be merciful and tell you." After that, Gilgamesh gently raised his hand. Buzz dash. Suddenly, from the golden ripples that fluctuated from the space around Gilgamesh, weapons slowly emerged as if they were floating from the water. They were weapons that looked extremely luxurious at first glance. There were swords. There were knives. There were guns. There were halberds. It was as if every type of weapon in the world was included in it. In the golden space ripples, at least dozens of weapons emerged, as if they were put on a bow that was fully drawn, and the tip was pointed in the direction of Noah in front of him. Seeing this scene, Noah's face finally showed a touch of surprise. Noble phantasm? Yes. There were at least dozens of luxurious knives, swords, spears, and halberds. All of them represented the hero phantasm itself as the strongest trump card. That was why Noah was shocked. Although he was not from this world, Noah's knowledge of this world was not inferior to the people in this world. Therefore, Noah knew that there were people who had more than one hero phantasm as the strongest trump card. Generally, hero phantasm could only have one hero phantasm. A very small number of hero phantasm had more than one hero phantasm, but there were only about 3 of them. Now, in front of Noah, how many hero phantasm had? The number of hero phantasm should not exist at all. Despite the shock in his heart, Noah calmly searched his mind for a piece of information about Gilgamesh's defensive skill that he had just probed. Golden rule. Ahas, the fate of being entangled with wealth for the rest of his life. He will not be troubled by money for the rest of his life. He will live like a millionaire from the beginning to the end, because there is a legend that he has taken all the treasures in the world for himself. He even has a treasure vault that keeps all the hero phantasm. This skill seemed to have nothing to do with combat, but in terms of equipment, this skill actually played a huge role. He had taken all the treasures in the world for himself, so he had a treasure vault that kept all the hero phantasm. This was Gilgamesh. In the oldest heroic epic recorded in human history, 2/3 of him was a god, and the remaining 1/3 was a human. As a half-human, half-god, he was the oldest king who ruled the ancient Sumerian city-state of Uruk in the pre-Christian era. For a servant of unknown origin, This kind of treatment is really too extravagant, isn't it? Gilgamesh seemed to be enjoying Noah's performance, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Let me tell you something. This is my noble phantasm, the Gate of Babylon. It is a treasure vault that contains all the prototypes of noble phantasms and technologies. You should be satisfied that you are able to see my treasure vault. After saying this, Gilgamesh suddenly waved his hand down. From the ripples in space, the various hero phantasms, such as knives, swords, spears, halberds, and other hero phantasms suddenly stopped. Then, like bullets, they shot out from the hero phantasm called the Gate of Babylon with bursts of golden light, and their speed was extremely fast. Noah's eyes flashed, and he suddenly raised his hand. One by one, magic arrays suddenly appeared from his body, like the muzzles of cannons aimed forward, and gathered an amazing amount of magic. Immediately, in the midst of the vibrations in space, beams of magic power burst out from the magic arrays, cutting through the air like laser beams, and suddenly collided with the hero phantasm. Pung 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 pung. The collision between the powerful beams of light and the hero phantasm caused a burst of loud and clear explosion sounds, shaking up a circle of shockwaves. The shockwaves spread out, and the surrounding sea of fire was shaken and scattered, dispersing a lot of it in an instant. Seeing this scene, Gilgamesh raised his eyebrows. Magic? The power is quite amazing. Although he said this, Gilgamesh's face had a trace of disdain. Since it's like this, then I'll use a special weapon to deal with you. Following Gilgamesh's words, in the golden space ripples that filled the surrounding space, it was obvious that they were completely different from the hero phantasm just now. The appearance more or less changed from luxurious to simple weapons, and with a rise and fall, they were like arrows, once again cutting through the air, shooting in the direction of Noah's direction. Noah just wanted to use the magic cannon again, but there was a warning in his heart for no reason. Intuition told Noah, if they were to use the magic cannons to offset it again, the result would definitely be different this time. Noah, who was extremely confident in his intuition, did not have the slightest hesitation, and his figure retreated quickly. Pung! The attacking hero phantasm's rain of hero phantasm fell on the spot where Noah was just a moment ago, and directly exploded the ground there, setting off thick smoke and fire. Oh, you noticed it? Gilgamesh said leisurely. No, I should say that I felt it, right? Noah, who had retreated, steadied himself. He was speechless when he sensed that the mana residue that had filled the space around him had suddenly disappeared. Those relics just now were all relics used for magic, right? The hero spirit's relics had all sorts of abilities. For example, Saber's invisible air had the ability to turn people invisible. For example, Lancer's Gibalg had a sure kill ability. For example, Archer's Law Ajax had the ability to defend against thrown weapons. Another example was Berserker's 12 Trials God's Hand, which gave him the ability to revive and resist attacks to a certain extent. Just now, the relic that Gilgamesh took out had the effect of breaking magic. It was a relic that could counter magic. That was why the magic residue that permeated the air was eliminated. It was not until this moment that Noah finally understood what the phrase, the prototype that owns all the noble relics meant. That meant that Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon had relics that could deal with all kinds of situations. As long as he targeted the opponent's weakness and took out the corresponding relic, then Gilgamesh would be invincible. A hero spirit that could use all kinds of relics. This was the kind of person Noah was facing. This made Noah frown slightly. It's a little tricky. A little tricky? Gilgamesh seemed to be laughing out of anger and closed his eyes. Then let me see, why would you think that it's a little tricky when facing my treasure? However, before Noah and Gilgamesh could start fighting again, a ray of light shot up to the sky and attracted their attention. That's the direction of the church? Chapter 777. Clank. While Noah was chasing after Yen Fengili, in front of the church, in the courtyard that seemed to have turned into a piece of scorched earth, the battle between Rider and Lancer started with a fierce sound as the prelude. In the field, the one who launched the first attack was naturally Lancer, who was known for his bravery. Lancer's body was surrounded by layers of slightly blood-red demonic energy, causing his body to turn into a blurry shadow. Then he charged towards Rider at lightning speed. Among the 7 classes in the Holy Grail War, Lancer had the highest requirement for ability points, second only to Saber. Therefore, in terms of ability points, if Saber had the highest requirement for ability points, then Lancer would be second. In addition, only knights with the highest level of agility could become Lancer's servant. One could only imagine how fast the Lancer, whose real name was Kuchurin, was. That speed alone was enough to make Ryder, who also had the highest level of agility, tense up his body and face the attack with 120% seriousness. With such agility, a distance of a few dozen meters could be said to be covered in the blink of an eye for Lancer. Ryder only felt a few breaths of time, and that blurry shadow had already flashed in front of him. Lancer tightened his grip on the magic spear in his hand, and like a crimson ray of light, it shot straight at Ryder's heart. If it were anyone else, even if they were also servants, they would probably break out in cold sweat because of Lancer's speed. However, Ryder, who also had the highest level of agility, was already prepared. Just when Lancer was 3 meters away from Ryder, Ryder made his move. As though he was teleporting, Ryder's figure suddenly moved horizontally as he retreated backwards. The chain dagger in his hand swiftly pierced out. The powerful force directly caused a faint arc of light to appear in the air where the chain dagger passed, bringing with it a sharp whistling sound as it shot forward. Lancer was obviously surprised to see that Ryder was actually able to open up the distance between them at such a close distance. Although they were both servants with the highest level of agility, Lancer and Ryder specialized in different areas. Lancer was good at instantaneous explosive speed. What Ryder excelled at was average movement speed. Therefore, in terms of instantaneous burst of speed, Ryder shouldn't be that high. But now Ryder's instantaneous burst of speed was almost catching up to Lancer. Of course, now was not the time to think about this. Sensing the sharp wind coming towards him, Lancer calmed himself down and let out a sinister laugh. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and his body suddenly floated up. The magic spear in his hand was like a bolt of lightning as it ruthlessly pierced towards Ryder, who was right below him. Ding! The crimson magic spear heavily pierced the chain dagger that was directly under Lancer's body. As sparks sputtered, a strong force burst out and easily suppressed the chain dagger. The moment the magic spear touched the chain dagger, Lancer's arm that was holding the spear bent and bent. The magic spear that had pierced Ryder's chain dagger immediately used the force of the dagger to propel Lancer's body, causing Lancer to do a somersault in midair. Like an eagle descending from the sky, the sharp magic spear shot towards Ryder's head with a chilling wind that made one's scalp numb. Facing Lancer's sudden and fierce attack, Ryder's face was solemn. His feet moved and his body instantly retreated a few steps. The chain dagger in his hand rose from bottom to top, and he fiercely raised it. Clang! The short sword and long spear collided heavily. The force from the collision caused Lancer's body, who was descending from the sky like an eagle, to be lifted into the air. As a result, Ryder, who was standing below, should have withstood the greater force, but his body didn't even tremble. With the chain dagger in his hand, he continued to retreat. Monstrous strength again? Lancer, who was floating in midair, instantly saw the reason why he was at a disadvantage in the previous confrontation. What a troublesome skill. Although it can only be maintained for a very short period of time, it can be used at any time. And it doesn't look like there's any interval between uses. I can't compete with strength, but I also can't compete with speed. My opponent's speed is not below mine, so it's really troublesome. Saying so, the smile on Lancer's face became wider and wider. However, in hand-to-hand combat, Ryder is obviously not good at it. I'll use high-intensity close combat to suppress her. As soon as this thought came to his mind, Lancer's body trembled slightly. A blood-red magic flame suddenly burst out from his body, lingering around him, and then converged on the magic spear in Lancer's hand, causing the already extremely bright red spear to become even redder. Ha! At that moment Lancer roared. His body spun and like a whirlwind he suddenly flew out. With a whoosh sound, his body madly shot toward Ryder's direction, and in an instant, he was in front of Ryder. As soon as he entered the attack range, Lancer didn't hesitate. His arm shook rapidly, and the magic spear was like a crimson-red viper, drawing a series of afterimages in the air, fiercely piercing toward Ryder's body. In an instant, Ryder, whose speed was not as fast as Lancer, could only raise the chain dagger in her hand. While maintaining her movement, she waved the chain dagger in her hand like a whip, pulling up the chain that was connected to the dagger in her hand. She waved it repeatedly, and the silver chains formed a steel net, protecting her entire body behind it. Ding 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 ding. The spear shadows of the devil's spear pierced through the protective net of chains at an astonishing speed, causing a series of crisp sounds to ring out. It was as though a strange melody was being played, producing a series of pleasing notes. Ding 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 ding. Under the continuous attacks, Ryder could only wave the chain in his hand to block them, but his body was constantly retreating. It felt as if he needed to use a chain to block every raindrop in the pouring rain, not letting a single drop fall on his body. One could imagine how difficult it was. Lancer's idea was indeed correct. Although in terms of ability value, Ryder was not inferior to Lancer, in terms of close combat, Ryder was obviously inferior to the Grand Knight, who was known as Fierce Dog. Over time, in the face of such a dense rain of attacks, even Ryder's defensive stance began to crumble. His movements began to feel awkward. Ha 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 ha. Take this, take this, take this, take this. Perhaps it was because he was too excited, Lancer couldn't help but laugh wildly. While madly thrusting his spear like a storm, he taunted Ryder. What's wrong? Ryder. Where's your imposing manner from just now? Reacting to Lancer's arrogant attitude, a fierce look flashed across Ryder's face. Without hesitation, he lashed out the chain that he had been using to form a defensive net like a whip. Like a fierce whip, he lashed it towards Lancer's direction, fiercely hitting the Crimson Demon's spear. Clang! In the loud sound of the collision, the two figures were sent flying backward in the strong wind. After rubbing against the ground for a distance of more than 10 meters, they finally stopped. However, Lancer was still the same as before, not showing any signs of being in a difficult position. As for Ryder, because he had just dealt with Lancer's continuous attacks, his breathing began to become disordered. It was clear who had the upper hand and who had the lower hand. No matter what, a cavalryman competing in close combat with me, a spearman, is simply asking for trouble. The sneer on Lancer's face faded slightly, and he raised his magic spear. You should also show your true ability? Chapter 778. It's time for you to show your true strength, right? Lancer's words froze the entire atmosphere. Ryder was silent. There was no doubt that Ryder had not shown his true strength yet. After all, in the Holy Grail War, every job class had its own requirements. The requirement for the Saber job class was that the heroic spirit must be able to reach the highest level in all aspects, except for magic power, and wield sword-type weapons. The requirement for the Lancer job class was that the heroic spirit must have the highest level of agility, and wield a gun-type weapon. The requirement for the Archer job class was that the heroic spirit must specialize in long-range attacks, wield a powerful shooting weapon, or have a special ability related to shooting weapons. Only the heroic spirit that met the job class requirement could use this job class as a vessel and descend into this world as a servant. Obviously, the servant that met the job class requirement also meant that the servant was good at fighting. Ryder, on the other hand, required a heroic spirit to have a deep relationship with a mount. As a result, the ability of the Ryder job class was generally lower than that of the three knights. However, they were able to make up for it by using the abilities of their mounts, which they had a deep relationship with, to display high-level riding skills and fight against their enemies. Therefore, the Ryder was not good at close combat at all. The reason why their ability points were not lower than the three knights, and their ability points requirements were second only to Saber's Lancers, was because of the vast amount of magic provided by Master Noah. However, even so, the Ryder's strength was not in close combat. The Ryder's strength and durability were only B-level, which proved this point. Otherwise, with Noah's magic power, the Ryder's strength and durability would definitely be more than B-level. Because Ryder wasn't a heroic spirit that specialized in close combat, Ryder's stamina and durability didn't continue to increase. The true strength of a servant Ryder was in the aspect of mounts. Lancer, who was very clear about this, stared at the Ryder in front of him with a very serious expression. You're not planning to hide your strength at this level, are you? Show me what you've got. Hearing this, Ryder slowly raised his head and looked at Lancer. Indeed. It's rare for Master to allow me to cause a ruckus. If I don't show my true strength, it would be too disappointing. As she said this, a burst of suppressed magic gradually rose from Ryder's tall and slender body like a strong wave of fire. Then I won't hold back. Don't regret it, Lancer. The magic power rising from Ryder's body suddenly stagnated. Clang! Suddenly, a strong light erupted from Ryder's body. It was an extremely pure white light. In such a burst of strong light, Ryder turned into a ray of white light and suddenly rushed into the sky. After rising to a certain height, it suddenly became like a white sun and suddenly turned into a shocking source of light. Lancer subconsciously raised a hand to block in front of him, but his eyes never closed. He stared intently at the white sun-like light source in the air. At a certain moment, his pupils shrank. This was because Lancer saw it clearly. In the center of the strong light, a shadow slowly emerged. It was the body of the shadow that made Lancer's expression become more and more serious. In the end, he even cursed out loud. I see. That's why you're Ryder. Damn it, with such a thing as a mount, what are you if not Ryder? It was normal for Lancer to have such a reaction, because he saw a fantasy. Whoosh! In the whistling sound of wings, in the center of the white sun-like light source, a horse appeared under the night sky. It was a white horse that was surging with blue mist. It had a pair of wings and was incomparably white. It gave off an extremely noble and holy feeling. At this moment, Ryder was riding on such a white horse with wings, looking down at Lancer below. Her figure was like that of a goddess. In fact, before she became a monster of Gorgon, Medusa was a goddess. Legend had it that when Medusa fell as a goddess and became a monster of Gorgon, and was beheaded by Perseus, a Pegasus named Pegasus flew out of her body. Because of this story, the Pegasus was also known as the son of Medusa. Therefore, Medusa, who had once given birth to Pegasus in her body, had an extremely deep relationship with the Pegasus, a creature that only existed in fantasy. This relationship had now grown into the power of Medusa, allowing Medusa to descend with the title of Ryder. Yes, Ryder's mount was the Pegasus. And this Pegasus that only existed in fantasy had a general name in this world. Fantasy breed. With an A+ level riding skill, Ryder, whose real name was Medusa, rode the fantasy breed, called the Pegasus, and descended from the sky. Since even this child has appeared, then I won't show any mercy, Lancer. Ryder's voice echoed around. Next, it's time to determine the winner. After saying that, the chain dagger in Ryder's hand gradually turned into a ray of light, forming a rope of light that wrapped around the neck of the Pegasus under him. Ryder held it tightly. At this moment, the aura of the Pegasus under Ryder suddenly rose, and even the magic around it skyrocketed. Neigh! The holy white horse immediately flapped its wings and let out a long neigh, and even its pair of eyes became blood-red. Bellerophon. This was Ryder's noble artifact. It could greatly increase the ability of the summoned fantasy breed, and it was a noble artifact that combined attack and defense. With the help of the relic, Ryder's riding ability had reached a whole new level. It caused the space around the Pegasus to ripple and set off layers of air waves. It was a shocking sight to behold. Ha 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 ha. Facing the amazing pressure from the sky, Lancer was not the least bit timid, but instead laughed out loud in joy. This is it. This is it. I participated in this boring ceremony, just to have a good fight with an opponent of this level. In the midst of this ecstatic laughter, Lancer quickly performed a spear dance, and the magic spear in his hand was like a javelin, holding it up. In that case, I will also use my strongest attack, just like what you said, Ryder. Let's have a showdown. Suddenly, a burst of blood-red magic suddenly rose from the magic spear that Lancer was holding on his shoulder, ready to throw like a red stream of air, suddenly skyrocketing. Immediately, the tip of the magic spear gathered a whirlpool-like red light wave. This is another use of my noble artifact. It gives up the concept of being dirty, but strengthens the power and range of effect, because if it is casually used, it will cause too much damage, so under normal circumstances I don't like to use it. Lancer's ecstatic voice also echoed under the moonlight. I will use this spear to meet your full blow. While speaking, the magic spear in Lancer's hand turned into a whirlpool-like light wave, and the magic gathered at the tip of the spear became denser and denser. In the end, it had expanded to cover all the space within 3 to 4 meters of Lancer. Feeling the amazing magic rising from Lancer's body at this moment, Ryder smiled fearlessly. In the next moment, a white comet and a red meteor burst out from the sky and the earth, respectively. Bellerophon. Gibalg. The real name of the noble artifact was released. The comet and the meteor collided fiercely in mid-air. Dong! A violent loud sound resounded through the sky. Chapter 779. Bellerophon. When Ryder released the true name of his precious artifact, beneath him, the pure and holy Pegasus let out a long neigh. The surrounding spiritual energy like mist curled around its body like flames, burning fiercely and expanding in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the holy Pegasus was completely covered by the flame-like magic mist. With a long neigh, it flapped its wings and swooped down toward Lancer under Ryder's control. Whoosh! It was as if it had transformed into a white comet. The sacred heavenly horse descended from the sky and streaked across the space. Wherever it passed, the atmosphere fluctuated violently. It was like ripples of water that continuously spread out. Looking at the white comet falling from the sky, Lancer raised his crimson magic spear. His whole body looked bright red under the light of the red magic flame on the magic spear. Then, he poured all the magic power in his body into his beloved spear at once. Gibalg! The moment he released the other real name of his spear, the blue veins on Lancer's strong arms bulged so obviously that they could be seen clearly even under the tight clothes. Immediately, Lancer's arm shook, and he threw out his magic spear fiercely. Wong! The tip of the demonic spear, which had a crimson whirlpool of light rippling around it, instantly transformed into a crimson meteor. It cut through the atmosphere and set off a series of turbulent flows like a violent storm. It was like a rocket that soared into the sky, shooting towards the horizon. A white comet falling from the sky. A red comet soaring into the sky. Two streaks of starlight, one white and one red, shook the space. Under the situation where the whole space was illuminated, they heavily collided in mid-air. At that moment, the whole sky suddenly became quiet. Then, an extremely terrifying energy suddenly exploded from the point of contact where the two streaks of starlight collided in mid-air. Dong! An earth-shattering roar resounded through the sky, turning into a sound wave. Like a circle of shock waves, it vibrated out. In mid-air, the white comet and the red meteor collided with each other, setting off a terrifying shockwave and intense flames. At this moment, the entire night sky seemed to be occupied by a sea of fire, causing violent shockwaves to continuously erupt. However, this scene could not be maintained for long. In just a few breaths of time, in the sea of fire in midair, the white comet that collided with the red meteor suddenly trembled, and an extremely terrifying magic power burst out of its body, causing the white comet to expand several times in size. Under such circumstances, the crimson meteor formed by the crimson demonic spear trembled. The crimson demonic chi flames on it were gradually extinguished by the terrifying demonic chi flames rising from the white comet at a speed visible to the naked eye. Pung! In the next moment, the red meteor was directly scattered by the white comet, turning into a burst of red sparks that scattered in all directions. The white comet, which did not lose its momentum, rushed out from it, turning into a gorgeous ray of light that shot to the ground. Wadash! Lancer only had time to show a shocked expression on his face. Then the comet from the sky filled his entire field of vision, bringing with it a terrifying gust of wind as it fell. Pung! In the courtyard in front of the church, a pure white spark exploded on the ground, causing a deafening explosion. With a terrifying impact wind, it swept out and spread in all directions. The overwhelming wave of fire and the shocking impact mixed with each other like a surging wave, sweeping in all directions, causing the entire church to be affected. Under the terrifying impact and the wave of fire, the church was quickly annihilated. The surrounding walls, solid ground, and ancient courtyard were all turned into fragments under this impact, and were drowned by the wave of fire. No one knew how long this scene lasted. It was not until a long time later that the terrifying wind and the intense fire gradually weakened and faded in the air. Whoosh! In the whistling sound of wings flapping, Ryder, who was riding on a Pegasus, floated in midair, looking down from above. Her face was as calm as an ancient well, and her posture was like a goddess, pure and beautiful. On the ground, in a huge crater that spanned over 100 meters, Lancer, whose tights were already in tatters, was lying inside. His body was covered with countless scars of various sizes, and dark red blood was dripping from his wounds. It was simply too horrible to look at. The winner had been decided. Ha! Ha ha! Even in such a miserable state, Lancer was still laughing. Looking at Rider, who was floating in the sky, there was no pain on his blood-stained face. Instead, there was only satisfaction. The goddess who rode on Pegasus, I see. The person who fought with me is actually such a person? Lancer finally recognized Rider's true identity. Your relic must be at least grade A, right? Looking down at Kuchurin, who was covered in blood and could no longer move, Rider nodded slowly. Even so, he still insisted on speaking without hesitation and without a trace of weakness. Bellerophon. This was a relic that could increase the ability of the summoned fantasy breed by leaps and bounds. It was a grade A+ relic that combined both attack and defense. It was also Rider's strongest trump card. On the other hand, Lancer's Gibalg was a grade B+ relic. Even with the plus feature that could double the damage in an instant, it was still a grade lower than Rider's relic. It was already clear who was stronger and who was weaker. Cough cough. Lancer coughed a few times, and his voice finally started to become weak. I thought that was a human relic. It turns out that it's the same as my gun, a military relic? The hero spirit's relics were categorized according to their effects and areas of effect. The most basic classification was a human relic and a military relic. As the name suggested, the so-called human relic was a relic that only worked on a limited number of targets such as oneself or a single enemy. This type of relic did not need to consume much magic, and its efficiency was very high in a one-on-one battle. Therefore, in a relic battle, human relic was usually the most commonly used type of relic. On the other hand, a military relic was a relic that could be used on an army of tens or even hundreds of people. It was a relic that could work on a wide range of targets. In short, it was a relic that could carry out large-scale destruction and bombing. Its power was so shocking that it could affect the entire army. In terms of power, if a human relic was compared to a single shotgun, a military relic would be a missile. The magic that such a relic needed to consume was shocking. After all, the power was completely different. There was a difference between a human relic and a military relic. The difference between the two types of relic was the number and range of targets that it could be used on. Other than that, there were other types of relic. For example, the magic relic that Gilgamesh used on Noah was a relic that specialized in magic. According to the different targets and range of effects, the relic was divided into a few types. Human relic and military relic were the most common types. The relic that Rider and Lancer used this time was a military relic. Undoubtedly, you used a military relic. However, you don't seem to have consumed much magic at all. The guy who provided you with magic is really a powerful guy. I used up all my magic in one go to use a military relic. Lancer laughed at himself. Really, losing to a woman like this is not cool at all. After saying this, Lancer's figure slowly turned into a cloud of mist and disappeared into the deep pit. Lancer left the arena. Seeing Lancer leave, Rider, who was riding on the Pegasus, remained silent for a while as if she was offering her last respect and condolences to Lancer. Then she turned her head and looked at the forest in the distance, a corner that was covered by a sea of fire. Then Rider, who was riding the Pegasus, turned into a comet and flew away. Chapter 780. On the other side, Noah and Gilgamesh, who were attracted by the light that suddenly soared into the sky from the direction of the church, both looked at the white light source under the night sky. When Rider was summoned, Noah had already learned from Rider about the treasures and trump cards of the servant who appeared in the form of a goddess. Therefore, Noah naturally knew that the mount that had a deep relationship with Rider was the Pegasus named Pegasus. It existed in Rider's blood and could respond to Rider's summons at any time. It was a fantasy breed like Bio. Of course, because of the world fragment, Bio had mutated. Although it was a fantasy breed, its ability had long surpassed the dragon species, which was known as the strongest among fantasy breeds. It even surpassed the category of fantasy beast and reached the level of mythical beast. Although Rider's Pegasus was not a mutant like Bio, its ability was one of the best in the category of fantasy breeds. In addition, Rider had an A+ level military treasure that could enhance the ability of the summoned fantasy breed. After using this noble artifact, the heavenly horse's ability would not lose to the strongest dragon species. Under such circumstances, once this trump card was used, Noah believed that Rider would definitely not lose to Lancer. Sure enough, in the next moment, The white comet that fell from the sky collided with the red meteor that soared into the sky. The white comet's victory was the result. Looking at the church that was annihilated under the violent impact, Noah chuckled. It seems that Ryder has already solved the problem. Has that dog been killed? Gilgamesh seemed to have the same thoughts as Noah and curled his lips. Well, forget it. As an entertainment program, that dog has done its duty. Although a dog is still a dog, it can only be used when guarding the door. With that said, Gilgamesh raised his hand, and the golden space ripples that fluctuated in the space around him disappeared like a door that was suddenly closed. Noah raised his eyebrows. Not fighting anymore? Hero King. There's already too much entertainment tonight. Gilgamesh glanced at Noah and laughed mockingly. We've already dealt with a lot of useless bastards. If we continue, it will be boring. You've saved your life, kid. Although Gilgamesh's tone was still as arrogant and conceited, his words were indeed correct in their meaning. Tonight, quite a number of people had left the venue. Archer, Lancer, Caster, Assassin. In just one night, 4 of the 7 servants who appeared because of the Holy Grail War had already left. This should be the fastest exit rate for servant in history, right? There were only 3 servants left. No. If the mysterious appearance of the 2nd archer and the 8th servant were included, then there should be 4 servants left. But why would there be a 2nd archer and an 8th servant? You said that if I survive, you'll tell me the truth, right? Noah looked straight at Gilgamesh. Since you don't plan to fight again, then I'll consider it my win, right? The oldest king in human history was not only arrogant, but also capricious. If he were to directly announce his victory like this, it was very likely that the other party would fly into a rage out of humiliation and launch an attack on Noah. However, that was not enough to make Noah retreat. With all the prototypes of the noble phantoms, Gilgamesh's power was obviously above any servant. If he really went crazy, then there should be no servant who could guarantee that they would have a 100% chance of winning against Gilgamesh, who could casually vent his noble phantoms. But that was it. Noah could see it. The real strong one was not Gilgamesh, but the noble phantoms called Gate of Babylon. As long as he could find a way to deal with the Gate of Babylon, then with Gilgamesh's ability, value and skills, only an intermediate servant would be able to deal with him, right? With such an obvious weakness, it was not scary. At least, Noah did not know how many enemies who were more terrifying than Gilgamesh were. Even if he did not use his authority, knowing Gilgamesh's weakness, although it could not be said that there was no threat, there was no reason to be afraid. Therefore, Noah did not have any misgivings and asked directly, "What's going on?" Hearing this, Gilgamesh looked at Noah coldly, but it was met with Noah's even colder gaze, which made him show a happy expression. The reason is very simple, kid. Because I'm not a servant of this Holy Grail War, but I've been staying in this world since the end of the last Holy Grail War. I'm just an archer of that Holy Grail War. A servant who stayed in this world after the end of the last Holy Grail War? Noah's heart suddenly moved. The hero king in front of him did have the ability to stay in this world after the end of the Holy Grail War, with an A+ level solo action skill. As an archer servant, he would generally be given the ability to act alone. Meanwhile, Gilgamesh's solo skill had already surpassed the highest tier of A rank. Even without a master, he could move about freely. In fact, when he used large-scale mana, the master's support was unnecessary. He could completely ignore the master and move about freely. Not only that, Noah clearly remembered that in the introduction of Gilgamesh's solo action skill, there was also the sentence, because he obtained a body as a servant, even after the end of the Holy Grail War, he could still continue to maintain this world. Therefore, if Gilgamesh continued to stay in this world after the end of the last Holy Grail War until now, then it could be considered as an explanation. But why could Gilgamesh as a servant obtain a body? Are you wondering why I can still stay in this world after the end of the last Holy Grail War until now? Gilgamesh didn't know that he obtained a body, but Noah already knew. He thought that Noah was wondering why he could continue to stay in this world after the end of the Holy Grail War. Gilgamesh inexplicably said such a sentence happily. Boy, do you know what the so-called Holy Grail is? Hearing Gilgamesh's meaningful words, Noah narrowed his eyes. Isn't it a wish-granting machine that can grant any wish? Wish-granting machine. Gilgamesh seemed to have heard something extremely funny. He bent down without caring about his image and laughed out loud. His voice was full of joy and ridicule. No, 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 that's not a wish-granting machine. It's just a killing machine. Killing machine. Noah frowned, but his heart suddenly sank. Because Noah remembered what Archer said before he disappeared. All the evil in this world? You already know all of it. Gilgamesh was surprised, but soon laughed again. You're right, boy, all the evil in this world. That's the true face of the Holy Grail. It's no longer an omnipotent wish-granting machine. It's just a curse that exists to curse humans. It's completely contaminated by the concept of evil. Saying such a sentence, Gilgamesh opened one of his hands. His face was full of evil smile. But, isn't it interesting to make such a thing? Noah's heart suddenly had an ominous premonition, making his eyes become sharp. What are you going to do? Gilgamesh didn't answer, but reached out his hand, and a ripple immediately appeared in the space beside him. From that ripple a person rolled out. Seeing the person rolling out of the golden ripple, Noah was startled, and then said in surprise, Shinji Tamatsuki? Surprisingly, it was Shinji Tamatsuki. Chapter 781. As soon as he appeared on the scene, Tong Shinji was like a person who was tortured to the point that he could no longer sober up. He lay on the ground looking at the sky with dull eyes like a complete retard. And on Tong Shinji's face, saliva was unscrupulously dripping from the corner of his mouth. He was not restrained at all. Of course, what surprised Noah was not Tong Shinji's performance, but his appearance. At this time, Tong Shinji's face, which originally had some redeeming features, had hideous blue veins wriggling. It looked like something was drilling under Tong Shinji's skin. If you looked carefully, you could find it. Not only on his face, but on Tong Shinji's whole body, those blue veins were constantly wriggling, looking very disgusting. Originally, Noah didn't have any good impression of Tong Shinji. Therefore, seeing Tong Shinji's miserable appearance, Noah didn't have the slightest sympathy and compassion. Noah was just puzzled. Puzzled as to why Tong Shinji, who was lucky enough not to die in his hands, became like this. How is it? Very ugly, right? Gilgamesh didn't even look at Tong Shinji, who looked like a retard, and sneered. But ugly things shouldn't be decorated. This posture is the shape that is most in line with the concept of evil. It's the best to use it as a contaminated holy grail. Noah didn't speak, just stared at Gilgamesh, which made Gilgamesh's smile somewhat slow down. Don't look at me with that kind of eyes, bastard. The person who made such an ugly thing is not me. Speaking of this, Gilgamesh didn't know what to think, and his expression became sarcastic. Well, for you, this is not completely unrelated. After all, the one who should have become like this is not Shinji, but the girl you have been paying attention to. This sentence finally made Noah react. What do you mean? Don't you know? The sarcasm on Gilgamesh's face became more and more intense. Do you really think that Mamatsuki Masanori almost transformed the little girl adopted from the Yuanzaka family, just to let her adapt to the Mamatsuki family's magic? Gilgamesh stretched out a foot, stepped on the face of Tong Shinji, who was lying on the ground like a retard, and grinned. Originally, Jiantong planned to transform that little girl in order to make Jiantonging into the Holy Grail. Hearing this sentence, Noah's face sank heavily. Before this year's Holy Grail War, this boring ceremony had already been held 4 times. Regardless of Noah's expression, or rather enjoying Noah's expression, Gilgamesh not only did not have the tendency to stop, but the more he spoke, the more energetic he became. The first 4 Holy Grail Wars were declared failures due to various problems. Sometimes it was because the magicians of the 3 families had internal strife and killed each other. Sometimes it was because the servants lost control, which led to the complete collapse of the whole ceremony. In the last Holy Grail War, it can be said that it was the only example of the Holy Grail being formed, but at that time the boring existence called Holy Grail had been contaminated and became the cursed door to hell. So that Holy Grail was destroyed as soon as it was formed. I was the only one who survived to the end. When I was about to touch the Holy Grail, the thing inside flowed out because of the destruction and poured on my body. Gilgamesh covered his head, showing an insolent expression. That curse will only curse and kill humans. As a servant, if I were to come into contact with that curse, As a spirit that should have been placed into the Holy Grail after losing the battle, I would also be contaminated together with the Holy Grail. Even my soul would become filthy. It's a pity that a curse of that level isn't enough to drive me crazy. That's why I got a body from that curse, and I don't need to consume my mana in this world anymore," Gilgamesh said with a sinister smile as he looked straight at Noah. "Of course, it's not only me who got benefits. A certain insect who dreamed of eternal life all day long also got a fragment of the destroyed Holy Grail. Originally, he planned to implant it into the little girl who was adopted by the Anaka family, and transform the little girl into the little Holy Grail. Then in this Holy Grail war, he let the little girl collect the souls of the defeated servants, so as to get the real Holy Grail. Unfortunately, this plan failed from the beginning. The Holy Grail War that existed in Fuyuki City was caused by the Great Holy Grail that collected magic power from the ley line. The Little Holy Grail was responsible for collecting the souls of the defeated servants and storing them. After collecting the souls of the 6 servants, the Little Holy Grail could use this power to open the hole leading to the origin. Then the Great Holy Grail would use a huge amount of magic power to fix this hole, so as to achieve the final goal of going to the origin. In other words, the Little Holy Grail was the trophy of the Holy Grail War, a wish-granting machine that could fulfill all wishes. Of course, only after collecting the souls of the 6 servants, the Little Holy Grail would become the real Holy Grail. If someone made another Little Holy Grail, and used this Little Holy Grail to collect the souls of the servants, when the souls of the 6 servants were collected, the person who held this Little Holy Grail would naturally be able to get the Holy Grail. For a long time, the Little Holy Grail was prepared by Einstein Balin. However, this time, someone else planned to make another Little Holy Grail. This person was Masanori Nakamura. And the Little Holy Grail that Masanori Nakamura wanted to make was Masanori Sakura. Unfortunately, Masanori Nakamura failed. I don't know where the power came from, but the whole plan was hindered. That insect almost went crazy. Otherwise, it wouldn't have used this guy as the Holy Grail. Gilgamesh kicked Shinji Mitsuki under his feet. Implanting a contaminated Holy Grail fragment was like stuffing cotton into a doll and randomly transforming it. The personality called Shinji Nakamura should have already been tortured and transformed, and completely disappeared because of the purgatory pain, right? Noah finally understood why Shinji Nakamura became like this. Shinji Nakamura had already been transformed into a hasty little Holy Grail by Masanori Nakamura. And the reason why Gilgamesh brought Shinji Nakamura with him had already floated to the surface. Over at Ludong Temple, the guy who killed Kugi Muniakiro was you, right? Noah took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "You went there to let Shinji Nakamura, the Little Holy Grail, collect the servant's soul, right?" After all, Einstein Balin also prepared the Little Holy Grail. Gilgamesh smiled happily. In a situation where there are 2, isn't it natural for the closer one to get what it wants first? Why did you do that? Noah only had this question. You also want to get the Holy Grail? That thing you said was contaminated and boring? Although it's boring, it's still very useful in terms of its function. Gilgamesh sneered. There's nothing more suitable than it to kill people. The humans in this era are all a bunch of boring bastards, and it makes people want to vomit. I've already decided to use it to get rid of the boring humans in this era. Because it's boring, so it has to be eliminated? Gilgamesh, who didn't know how ridiculous his words were, waved his hand, and a golden ripple covered Shinji Nakamura and put him away. Let's end the chat here, boy. Even if it's a hasty Holy Grail, it should be able to barely take shape with another servant's soul. You have to pay attention to the safety of the 2 servants around you. Don't let them lose their lives if you're not careful. Leaving this sentence, Gilgamesh just wanted to leave, but a huge beam of light burst out and attacked his back. Bang! A shockwave that seemed to have materialized erupted and spread out in all directions. Chapter 782. Pung Dash. The magic light beam that fell on Gilgamesh's body set off a violent impact and intense flames, like a gust of wind, spreading in all directions. Looking at the sudden explosion in front of him, Noah raised a hand and pointed it in the direction of the explosion. An intricate magical array was spinning in his hand, and there was no emotion in his deep dark eyes. There was only complete coldness in them. Not long after, The impact of the explosion and the intense flames began to dissipate. Among them, a huge shield appeared there without anyone knowing. Along with the gradually dissipating impact and the intense flames, it disappeared in the air, exposing Gilgamesh's figure. Lifting his head, looking at Noah in front of him, Gilgamesh's expression completely disappeared. It seems that you're in a hurry to disappear, boy. Noah just gently lowered his raised hand, facing Gilgamesh's gaze, which was like looking at a dead man, and smiled, a smile without the slightest emotion. Do you think that after saying those words, I would still silently watch you leave? So, you intend to stop me, intend to save mankind? Gilgamesh closed his eyes like a volcano about to erupt. His whole body surged with pressure. Don't be stupid, boy. The so-called salvation should be based on value. Only valuable things need to be saved. This world is full of too many worthless bastards. All the evil in this world is born because of the evil thoughts of these bastards. Then, if mankind is obliterated by the evil born from themselves, isn't that a matter of course? While speaking, Gilgamesh seemed like he really wanted to vomit, and was speechless. In my time, although the population is not as dense as it is now, but everyone has their own value, even slaves have their own places to be used. Losing one is a waste, but in this era there are too many boring people, just like insects, mosquitoes and flies. Once there are too many of them, it will only make people feel disgusted. Too many in itself is a sin. Can saving these bastards reflect your greatness? Boy! Gilgamesh suddenly opened his eyes, and the pressure that pervaded his body began to erupt. I thought that you were a smart person who could fight against the great hero as a human. At least you have some value in your existence. That's why I left you a chance to submit to me and be under my control. However, I don't need a bastard who dares to attack the king. Along with this sentence, an amazing sense of oppression spread from Gilgamesh's body. However, in the face of this sense of oppression, Noah's performance was abnormally calm. Are you done? If you're done, then it should be my turn, right? Noah raised his eyes and looked straight at Gilgamesh. Since the little Holy Grail transformed by Tomonori Kenzai has already fallen into your hands, and you are still collecting the souls of the servants, then either you snatched this result from Tomonori Kenzai, or Tomonori Kenzai gave it to you himself. Am I right? Indeed, Shinji was given to me by that insect. The corner of Gilgamesh's mouth rose. I have also prepared the Holy Grail here. Do you want to open the gates of hell together? Because that insect told me so, it piqued my interest, so I asked for Shinji from him. That is to say, you are indeed in cahoots, right? Noah suddenly laughed. Then this reason is enough. After saying that, Noah raised one of his hands, and an intricate geometric magic circle suddenly spun out from the surrounding space, covering Noah's body. I don't care about the life and death of all humans, and I also agree with your statement that humans without value have no meaning to live. But Hero King, our values are still different. In my eyes, those who are pleasing to the eye have the value to be saved, and those who are not pleasing to the eye should disappear as soon as possible. To me, killing without even knowing whether they are pleasing to the eye or not is the most annoying thing. Noah's face was calm. Not to mention, you are in cahoots with those who I think are the most unpleasant and the most trashy people. That is enough reason for me to stop you. If you want to refute me, take out your treasure, Hero King. Noah's words directly made Gilgamesh laugh, and it was a creepy laugh. Don't be too complacent, bastard. After saying that, Gilgamesh also raised his hand, and golden ripples immediately fluctuated in the surrounding space. Just like Noah on the opposite side, the surrounding space was filled with golden ripples. Seeing that the strongest master and the strongest servant in the Holy Grail War were about to explode the tension in the air, in the distance a white comet flashed, cut through the sky, and landed on top of Noah's head. Noah and Gilgamesh raised their heads almost at the same time and looked at the sky. Immediately afterward, riding a holy Pegasus, with the Pegasus flapping its wings, Rider slowly descended from the sky and entered the eyes of Noah and Gilgamesh. Humph! Gilgamesh coldly snorted and turned his gaze back to Noah. Then Gilgamesh said such a sentence. Boy, you want to stop me, right? Noah did not answer, but met Gilgamesh's gaze and silently expressed his thoughts. In that case, let's play a game. Gilgamesh suddenly smiled. Listen, boy. I'm going to meet the rare great hero who is also a demigod. and collect his soul into the body of the Holy Grail, Shun-Air. Then, I'll use the souls of the 5 servants to open the hole of the Holy Grail and release all the evil inside. If you want to stop me, then give it a try. But you have to remember, boy. Gilgamesh looked in the direction of Noah, as if he wanted to show something, and stretched out a hand. Once the game starts, you can't stop halfway. I'll leave Saber and Ryder on your side to you. You can please me as much as you want. As soon as this sentence was finished, a huge magic light beam suddenly shot out from Noah's direction and fell on Gilgamesh's body. Boom! An intense shockwave exploded out. Looking at the impact and flames in front of him, Noah slowly lowered his hand. At the same time, Ryder rode on the Pegasus and landed on the ground. He softly called out to Noah, "Master, should we chase after him?" Ryder's question was clear to everyone. Gilgamesh had already escaped. Ryder did not ask who the other party was, nor did he ask about the current situation. He only asked a question that required instructions, and did not ask anything else. But how to chase after him? Gilgamesh's aura had already disappeared, and it was impossible to catch up. Noah stared at the place where Gilgamesh was a second ago, ignoring the impact and flames. He turned his head and looked in another direction. There, the dying Yanfeng Chili began to move his body, intending to crawl in the other direction of the forest. In response, Noah raised his hand again and pointed it in the direction of Yanfeng Chili. In the next moment, the familiar precise geometric pattern rotated in front of Noah's palm again. It emitted a strong light and condensed all the flowing mana. Then the mana that turned into a light beam passed through the space, brushed past the atmosphere, and fell on the dying Yanfeng Chili. Ah! Yanfeng Chili let out his last scream, and his body was directly annihilated in the huge magic light beam, vanishing into thin air. Boom! The ground was directly blasted apart by the undiminished power of the magic light beam, and violent wind and fire waves shook the ground, causing pieces of gravel to scatter in all directions. At this moment, the ground that had been directly hit by Noah's magic light beam several times was no longer whole. Together with the surrounding forest that was still burning, it was as though it had been hit by a meteorite, and turned into an incomplete purgatory. Noah raised his head and looked at the deep night sky, and his voice echoed, "There are more and more people that need to be dealt with." Chapter 783. After such a magnificent night, when Noah returned to Enosaka's home, the sky was almost bright. Rin Enosaka and Saber had probably gone to rest, leaving the Enosaka family's living room in silence. Noah did not turn on the lights and sat directly on the sofa, sinking his body deep into the soft sofa. He looked at the ceiling and did not respond for a long time. "Master." Ryder, who had entered the state of spiritualization, spoke softly beside Noah. "Do you need me to search for the dirty inkstone again?" Hearing this, Noah came back to his senses and shook his head. "No need, the dirty inkstone is with Gilgamesh. It's very likely that it's next to Gilgamesh. Even if you find it, I don't think you can do anything to him, right?" Gilgamesh, the oldest king in human history. This guy was indeed a little tricky. In Noah's opinion, if Ryder were to go all out and use all his noble artifacts and skills, he would have no problem fighting Artoria, the Night King, and Hercules, the great hero. In this batch of servants, Ryder's strength would definitely not lose to any of the hero spirits. However, Gilgamesh was an opponent of another level. In terms of strength alone, Gilgamesh was no match for Ryder. However, Gilgamesh's noble artifacts were too unfair. After all, no matter who it was, they had their own weaknesses. And these weaknesses were even more obvious when they fell on the hero spirits, who were clearly recorded in myths and legends. Gilgamesh, who had all the prototypes of noble artifacts, only needed to use noble artifacts that targeted the weaknesses of these hero spirits. It was impossible for him to lose. Therefore, even if Saber and Ryder worked together, it was still unknown whether they could defeat Gilgamesh, the hero king. Let that guy take his time to clean up the dirty inkstone. Noah closed his eyes. Our real enemy is Gilgamesh. If we can get rid of that guy, then there won't be any problems. Ryder did not say anything else. He seemed to understand what Noah meant. To be honest, even Noah did not know if he could take down the hero king. Without using his authority, Noah's combat strength was limited. Furthermore, Magic and magic would be completely countered by Gilgamesh's magic treasures because of their compatibility. If Noah were to fight Gilgamesh, he would definitely not be able to win against Gilgamesh, who could casually unleash his noble phantasm, which was equivalent to a trump card for heroic spirits. Generally speaking, if a hero spirit had 3 relics, it would be considered to be outstanding among all the other hero spirits. It would be a powerful existence. Under such circumstances, the number of noble artifacts Gilgamesh possessed was something that would make anyone feel despair just by thinking about it. Therefore, against such a figure, Noah's chances of winning were not high at all if he did not use his authority. No, there was no possibility of winning at all. Of course, if he had used his authority, it would have taken less than a minute to get rid of Gilgamesh. However, the 1-month time limit was not up yet. Noah did not want to use his authority yet. After all, it would be too much of a compliment to Gilgamesh if he used the entire world to defeat a Chinibu. This way, Noah would have no way to deal with Gilgamesh. No. Noah opened his eyes, turned his head, and looked in one direction. There's still a way. After muttering to himself, Noah stood up and walked in the direction he was looking at. Gotcha. With the soft sound of a door opening, Noah opened the door to a room. Almost at the moment when Noah opened the door, a voice came into Noah's ears from inside the room. Are you back? Hearing this voice, Noah raised his head and met a pair of emerald green eyes that were like gemstones. He saw that in the room, a girl wearing a white shirt and a blue dress was sitting cross-legged on the ground with a blue ribbon as decoration. Her conspicuous golden hair was coiled up. She looked very gentle and elegant, dignified and beautiful, like a noble lady. On a bed opposite the young girl, another young girl was lying there, deep in sleep. It was Saber and Tong Ying. Saber seemed to have noticed Noah's arrival long ago. She stared at Noah and asked very seriously, "From the looks of it, you seem to have gained quite a lot from this trip." Gain? Noah smiled bitterly. Indeed, but there are not only good things to be gained but also bad things. Then, do you want to discuss it? Saber said in a methodical manner. Rin has already told me that if you have something important to say, you can just wake her up, but if it's not something urgent, then don't disturb her sleep. Otherwise, she will kill you. Not bad, it's indeed a very Rin Asaka style of instruction. Noah was speechless, but he still nodded. I do have something to discuss with you. No, it should be said that I need to inform you. It's not a discussion but a warning? Saber frowned. In other words, you have decided on something, but you don't intend to listen to our opinions. You just want to explain it to us regardless of whether we agree or not, right? For the time being, you can understand it this way. Noah did not explain further and said this directly. Now you should rest well. I will explain it when you wake up tomorrow. After that, Noah was about to turn around and leave, but he inadvertently glanced in the direction of Tong Ying. When he saw Tong Ying's appearance, he stopped and was stunned. With an uncertain expression on his face, Noah hesitated for a while, then walked in the direction of Tong Ying. He came to the edge of the bed, stretched out his hand, and lifted the quilt covering Tong Ying a little. After that, he finally saw Tong Ying's appearance. What entered Noah's eyes was a sea of purple. Tong Ying's originally jet black and beautiful hair had all turned purple. Looking at Tong Ying's purple hair, Noah silently put the quilt back on Tong Ying's body. That's probably because of the magic circuit that has always existed in Sakura's body, and is connected to my body? Perhaps she was talking to herself, but Saber suddenly began to explain. For a magician, a part of the body is the best magic catalyst. Blood, skin, and hair are like clones of a magician. They can all be used in the research of magic. For a female magician, the importance of hair is self-evident. There are magicians who only need one strand of hair to create a familiar. Therefore, Sakura's hair color will change because it has always existed in Sakura's body, and is connected to the magic circuit between Sakura's body and mine. That did not belong to Tong Ying, but to the magic circuit between Saber and the golden scabbard. Now with Tong Ying as an individual, this magic circuit was like an external magic circuit that penetrated Tong Ying's body, causing Tong Ying, the medium, to be more or less affected. In addition, for a female magician, hair is the part that can best reflect themselves, which caused this effect to be directly reflected in Tong Ying's hair. Although, strictly speaking, Maya Tongyura was not a qualified magician. Is it still causing an effect? Smoothing out Tong Ying's completely purple hair, Noah was more certain of his next step. Looks like it's better to get the thing out as soon as possible. The next day, as soon as the sun rose, Rinanaka and Saber walked out of their rooms and into the hall. Noah, who had not slept the entire night, was still sitting on the sofa, as if he did not notice Rin Enbin and Saber's arrival. He drank a cup of black tea that he had brewed himself. There was no sign of fatigue on his face. After all, Noah expected that he would not have the chance to sleep last night, so he slept the entire day. Now he was still quite energetic. I've already applied for leave from school. As soon as he appeared, Rinanaka threw out this sentence. Today we have all the time in the world. Chapter 784. About 10 minutes later, Noah, who had explained everything that happened last night, stopped talking, causing the atmosphere in the hall to fall into an indescribable depression. Chilly. Rin and Osaka clenched her fists, lowered her head, and gritted her teeth. Her trembling body showed how much she was shaken. So, it's you? It was natural for Rin and Osaka to have such a reaction. After all, Noah didn't hide the fact that Yen Feng Chili killed Rin and Osaka's father. Rin and Osaka had the right to know about this. Compared to Rin and Osaka, Saber's reaction wasn't small either. The tainted Holy Grail. Saber's expression was more complicated than ever. In other words, the Holy Grail can't be used to fulfill wishes this time? Although he was the one being summoned, as a heroic spirit that existed outside the world, even with the help of the Great Holy Grail, he couldn't summon whoever he wanted to as a heroic spirit. First of all, if the summoned party didn't want to respond to the summon, then even with the help of the Holy Grail, the magicians wouldn't be able to summon them. Therefore, the heroic spirits that responded to the summoning of the magicians and appeared in this era in the form of servants more or less had their own goals. Among them, most of them naturally wanted to obtain the Holy Grail and use it to fulfill their wishes. Some of them had regrets left behind before they became heroic spirits. Some of them had desires that were purely for themselves. For these regrets and desires, the spirits would respond to the Holy Grail's summons and descend as servants. Of course, there were also spirits like Lancer who only responded to the summons because they wanted to have a good fight. Their goal wasn't the Holy Grail. Obviously, the reason why Saber responded to the summons was because of the former. This Night King had a wish that needed the Holy Grail to fulfill. I've already explained the situation to you guys. Noah was considerate enough to not be bothered by Rin and Saber's reactions. Instead, he changed the topic and continued. Now you have to understand two things. First, the Holy Grail that exists in Fuyuki City is no longer a wish-granting machine, but a pure cursed door, a killing machine. Second, the hero king named Gilgamesh is planning on using this corrupted Holy Grail to clean up the humans of this era. As for what you should do next, I hope you will consider it carefully. Noah's words brought Rinanaka and Saber back to their senses. Suppressing their emotions, they turned their attention back to the matter at hand. Noah is right, Rin. Saber calmly said to Rinanaka after she calmed herself down. Since it's no longer the Holy Grail, then our Holy Grail war is meaningless. What should we do next? What's your plan, Saber? And Osaka didn't answer. I'd like to hear your opinion first. You're right. Saber closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she had returned to her previous awe-inspiring and righteous self. Since it's no longer the Holy Grail, then what we can do is to defeat the evil in front of us. Should I say, as expected of the righteous Night King? Even though the contamination of the Holy Grail had greatly affected Saber, the Night King still made the decision to give up on the treasure that she had always wanted. She even proposed to get rid of the source of evil. Indeed, she was quite chivalrous. Since Saber was like this, Rin and Osaka naturally didn't have any hesitation. I don't have any opinions. Rin and Osaka said indifferently. Originally, my goal wasn't the Holy Grail itself, but to win the Holy Grail war. Even if the Holy Grail has been contaminated, my thoughts still haven't changed. To win in the end, this is what I want to do. Rin and Osaka had already learned from Archer that the Holy Grail might be tainted. Therefore, Rin and Osaka had already made this decision when he first learned about it. There was no reason for him to hesitate now. The only problem left is you, Noah. At this time, Rin and Osaka narrowed his eyes and looked straight at Noah. Speaking of which, I've never asked you before. Why did you participate in the Holy Grail War? If we decide to destroy the Holy Grail, what do you plan to do? I didn't participate in the Holy Grail War for the Holy Grail. I just want to find something that can only be found in this Holy Grail War. Even if the Holy Grail is destroyed, I won't have any thoughts about it. Noah avoided the topic without leaving a trace. Compared to me, writer, do you also think it's okay to destroy the Holy Grail? As soon as Noah's voice fell, Ryder's figure appeared behind Noah. I don't have any attachment to the Holy Grail either. Ryder's unique voice, which was both gorgeous and steady at the same time, echoed in the surroundings. It would be a lie to say that I don't have any wish to fulfill, but even if it can't be fulfilled, I won't have any regrets. Is that so? Rin and Osaka looked around at everyone and then smiled helplessly. In the end, other than Saber, no one here wants the Holy Grail? There was no doubt that the masters and servants who participated in the Holy Grail War were all here for the Holy Grail. However, there were 2 masters and 1 servant here who didn't have any attachment to the Holy Grail. In addition to Rin and Osaka's servant, the disappeared archer also didn't have any attachment to the Holy Grail. This time the Holy Grail War really gathered all kinds of strange people. Since no one has any objections, then there is no doubt about the next course of action. Noah concluded with this sentence. Defeat Gilgamesh and destroy the contaminated Holy Grail. No one has any objections, right? Both Saber and Ryder nodded their heads heavily. Only Rin and Osaka looked at Noah with a puzzled expression. Speaking of which, even if the Holy Grail is contaminated, you don't have any reason to continue this ritual since you don't have any attachment to the Holy Grail, right? Why would you take the initiative to destroy the Holy Grail? Speaking up to here, Rin and Osaka showed an expression that was both joking and serious. Don't tell me you really want to save all of humanity? Saber and Ryder also turned their attention to Noah. Although they only knew each other for a few days, everyone here knew that although Noah wasn't an evil person, he wasn't a kind person either. If one were to describe it, it would be that Noah was quite casual. That's right. He was very casual. Sometimes, Noah would help his enemies without hesitation. Sometimes, even if it was someone he had never met before, Noah would kill them. He was very cruel. Sometimes, Noah would act alone. Once he made a decision, no matter how much the people around him said, he wouldn't change his mind. Sometimes, Noah would respect the thoughts of the people around him. He would actively listen to their opinions and act together. Sometimes he was very gentle. Sometimes he was very domineering. Sometimes he was very mysterious. Sometimes he was very naive. Therefore, no one knew when Noah would overturn the understanding of others and make decisions that others couldn't understand. Rin and Osaka had this question, but he didn't understand. This time, Noah decided to save humanity for some reason. Hearing Rin and Osaka's words, Noah couldn't help but recall. He recalled that in the world of the Black Bullet, when he decided not to save humanity, some of the people showed hope and the world fragment that appeared because of this hope. Noah immediately smiled. His smile caused all the girls to become absent-minded. Then Noah gave this answer. If there is no good person in the world, then I don't mind letting everyone die. But if there is a good person in the world, then I also don't mind saving him. Chapter 785. Noah's words made Rin Emben, Saber, and Ryder look at each other. But they couldn't find any words to refute him. They could only fall into a state of speechlessness. The 3 girls only confirmed it once again. Noah was very casual. For Noah, the good people he spoke of were definitely people that he liked. In other words, Noah would only save those who he thought were worth saving. For those who weren't worth saving, even if he coldly watched them die, he wouldn't waver. Noah was also very gentle. At the very least, Noah didn't choose not to save those who were dying, but to choose who to save. It had to be said that Noah and Gilgamesh were quite similar. After all, both of them were very casual and overbearing people. The difference was that Noah and Gilgamesh had different values. From Noah's point of view, as long as the person wasn't filthy, then there was value in saving them. From Gilgamesh's point of view, as long as the person wasn't worthless, then there was value in continuing to live. From Noah's point of view, as long as the person was filthy, then there wouldn't be any problems even if they were killed. From Gilgamesh's point of view, as long as the person was worth living, then even if the person was filthy, they would be tolerated. One would save. One would judge. One would judge humans according to their own discretion. One would treat humans the same, even if they were intolerable evildoers. From this point of view, Noah was the one who was truly casual. And Gilgamesh was just being willful. Of course, Gilgamesh was also aware of this. However, from the perspective of the most ancient hero in history, a king had the right to be willful. No matter how cruel, those who were controlled by him should choose to obey. This was the difference between Noah and Gilgamesh. But what should we do? Rin Enbin acted as if she was embarrassed by Noah's smile. She turned her head and pretended as if nothing had happened as she changed the topic. That Gilgamesh is the oldest king in the human epic, the nouveau riche who owns all the treasures in the world, right? How are we going to beat that guy? This time, Saber and Ryder were silent as well. Gilgamesh, the hero king who possessed all the prototypes of noble artifacts. Facing such a servant, even Saber and Ryder, who were the Night King and Medusa respectively, were at a loss for words. Obviously, these two people did not dare to be sure that they could defeat Gilgamesh. Looks like we have to think of a way to deal with that upstart, Rinanaka said with a troubled expression. If there's no way to deal with him, then it's impossible to destroy the Holy Grail. Saber and Ryder nodded at the same time, agreeing with Rinanaka. Right at this moment, Noah suddenly spoke. I can deal with the Hero King. The three girls present were completely stunned. Of course, don't celebrate too early. Noah threw out such a sentence before the three girls could react. If I want to defeat that Shinibu king, I have to retrieve something that belongs to me. However, that might affect Saber. The three girls finally reacted. It will affect me? Saber furrowed her beautiful brows as she recalled what Noah said last night. You said earlier that you needed to tell us about it and not discuss it with me. Is this the matter? Noah nodded silently as he stood up from the sofa and walked out of the living room. Seeing this, Rin Enbin, Saber, and Ryder looked at each other, and then followed him one by one. Noah opened the door to Mamatsuko Sakura's room and walked in as if the sun had not risen yet. Rin Enbin, Saber, and Ryder followed closely behind Noah. They saw Noah walk to Mamatsuko Sakura, who was lying on the bed and sat on the edge of the bed. They were all confused. Could it be? Rin Enbin asked with uncertainty. The thing that you said belongs to you is with Xiaoying? Saber also stared at Noah, her eyes blinking with an unprecedented seriousness. Since it was related to Mamatsuko Sakura and her, Saber did not think that it was something insignificant. Saber's sharp intuition told her that she had to be a witness to what happened next. Otherwise, she would definitely regret it. Under the gaze of Rin Enbin, Saber, and Ryder, Noah stroked Tachibana's hair, which had turned purple, and said, Don't worry, I'll be fine. All of you know what a relic is, right? He asked a question that he already knew the answer to, which made the three girls even more confused. What is a relic? Rin Enbin asked. Isn't a relic the weapon that the hero spirits used when they were alive, or the proof of their great deeds that were mentioned in myths and legends? That's right. The relic of the hero spirits is the weapon that they used when they were alive. Some of them are the relic of the legend. In short, it is the trump card and proof of the hero spirits. It is a miracle that only exists in fantasy. Noah nodded and suddenly asked another question. In that case, let's not talk about the noble phantoms that appeared according to the legends of the heroic spirits. Let's talk about the noble phantoms that the heroic spirits used when they were alive. Where are those noble phantoms now? Where did they go? Rin Enbin looked at Saber and Ryder in confusion. Speaking of which, in your era, where are the treasured artifacts that you all possessed now? He brought nothing with him when he was born, and brought nothing with him when he died. Even the hero spirits who lived as heroes couldn't bring their weapons and relic with them when they died as heroes. Now, the relic that the hero spirits had was the same as the hero spirits themselves. It was formed from people's fantasies and beliefs. That was why the relic was a materialized miracle. It was a miracle that only existed in fantasy. Then, where did the noble phantoms that actually existed in the mythological era go? Let me answer this question, Noah said directly. The relic that the hero spirits had was only used when they were alive. It was a legend that was lost in the modern era. Due to various reasons, their relic was destined to be destroyed in the long river of history. For example, the Night King of Great Britain. Noah turned around and looked at Saber. It was said that after the Night King died, she ordered her subordinates to throw the holy sword that the lake sprite gave her back into the lake and returned it to the lake sprite. From then on, the famous holy sword represented the end of the Night King's era. Completely disappeared. Saber's eyes flashed slightly, but she didn't say anything. She remained silent. Similar situations have been mentioned in the lives of almost every heroic spirit. It proves that the heroic spirit's noble phantasm has been lost and disappeared in various ways under various circumstances in their own myths and legends. Since then, the noble phantasm has become a legend that is only possessed by the heroic spirit when they were alive and completely lost after they died. Noah suddenly smiled. But there are exceptions to everything. Let's use the example of the Night King as an example. According to the legends, the Night King's treasures were not only the holy sword, but also the holy sword's scabbard. However, the scabbard was lost by him, Noah said as he looked at Saber. Saber's expression changed slightly. If the relic that the hero spirits used when they were alive was the manifestation of myths and legends, and it returned to the myths and legends in various ways after they died, becoming a miracle that shouldn't have existed, then what would happen to the scabbard that was suddenly lost instead of returning to the myths and legends? Noah didn't give them time to answer and turned around. The answer will be up to you to witness it yourselves. After saying that, Noah extended one of his hands above Tong Ying, who was lying on the bed. Okay, it's time to come back. As soon as he finished speaking, a dazzling golden light suddenly burst from Tong Ying's body, illuminating the entire space around her. Chapter 786. Clang! The bright golden light was like a tide, suddenly emerging from the body of Tong Ying, spreading to the surroundings, instantly filling every corner of the room, illuminating the entire space. Rin and Osaka, Saber, and Ryder were all shocked. They subconsciously raised their hands in front of themselves, trying to block the dazzling golden light. However, in the next moment, the scene that appeared in front of the three girls caused them to be shocked. Buzz! With a trembling sound, a beautiful scabbard slowly appeared on Jian Tanjing's body. It floated above Jian Tanjing, who was lying on the bed. It shone with shocking light. The moment she saw the scabbard, Saber's pretty face changed drastically. Even her gem-like eyes could not help but waver. In the end, it turned into disbelief. As for Rin and Osaka and Ryder, they were just purely shocked. They were shocked that there was such a scabbard in Tsushima Sakura's body. Especially Rin and Osaka, who was completely stunned. What is this? Noah did not immediately answer Rin and Osaka's question. Instead, he stretched out his hand and gently touched the surface of the scabbard. As Noah's hand touched it, the gorgeous scabbard flashed with a stream of light, as if it was responding to Noah, becoming brighter and brighter. Finally, Noah held the scabbard named Avalon tightly in his hand, letting it lie in his hand. At this moment, the bright light that lit up the entire space slowed down bit by bit, until a layer of light covered the surface of the scabbard, then it stopped. At first glance, it was as if there was a ray of light lying in Noah's hand, making the scene extremely beautiful. If we say that the noble artifacts of the heroic spirits are miracles that only exist in fantasies, then what you are seeing now is a legend that truly exists in this era. Noah gently touched the surface of Avalon as he slowly spoke. This is an extremely rare treasure that has stubbornly persisted for thousands of years, since the mythological era. It has not disappeared in the long river of history and myths. It has been passed down to this era, and it still hasn't disappeared. Hearing Noah's words and seeing the gorgeous scabbard in Noah's hand, the girls were momentarily speechless. Rin and Osaka and Medusa were simply moved, right? They were moved that the mystery that should have disappeared actually appeared in front of them in such a form. Saber, on the other hand, stared at the glowing scabbard with a complicated expression on her face. Could this be the mysterious power in Sakura's body? Rin and Osaka's gaze could not leave the scabbard, but he still asked. The mysterious power that has been protecting Xiaoying is this scabbard, right? The scabbard of the Night King. Ryder glanced at Saber. It was hard to tell how he felt when he said that. Just like the legends say, it is very dazzling. As expected of the holy sword scabbard, Saber's expression became even more complicated. After a while, she took a deep breath and looked at Noah. You already knew that this scabbard was the mysterious power that had always protected Sakura, right? At this point, how could Saber still not understand? At that time, the reason why Noah suddenly found out about her true identity was because he knew about the existence of this scabbard. Saber also finally understood why the mysterious power in her master's body could connect to her magic and provide her with magic. Everything was because the source of the mysterious power was the scabbard that the Night King, Artoria, once owned. But why? Why could the scabbard provide her with magic? The only person who could use this scabbard should be Saber, the owner of the scabbard. After thousands of years, it was impossible for Saber's magic to remain in the scabbard and return it to Saber to maintain her existence. Saber was sure. At this moment, the magic power flowing in Avalon did not belong to him. Although it was just Saber's intuition, Saber still felt it. The scabbard in front of her did not seem to belong to her anymore. Saber's intuition was right. The noble phantasm named Avalon no longer belonged to the Night King. Don't look at me like that. Even I didn't expect this at first. Noah smiled bitterly. My scabbard actually appeared on Sakura and protected her for so long. This is something I didn't expect. Your scabbard? Saber asked almost reflexively. You said that this is your scabbard? That can't be right. Rin Enbin also spoke. This should be Saber's scabbard, right? Rin Enbin already knew about Saber's true form. After all, last night in the battle against Castor, in order to defeat Sasaki Kojiro, Saber released her noble phantasm and released her real name. At that time, Rin Enbin was present. How could he not see it? In this regard, Noah just faintly replied. This is a relic that truly exists in this era. Not a fantasy that is only limited to the heroic spirits when they were alive. Since Avalon chose Saber as its master back then, it shouldn't be strange for it to choose me as its master now, right? Master? Rin Enbin was stunned. You mean this noble phantasm now has recognized you as its master? It's a coincidence. Noah said perfunctorily and raised the scabbard in his hand. In short, with the help of Avalon, I am confident that I can deal with the Hero King. There is only one problem left. Noah cast his gaze on Saber. Your magic was provided by Avalon before. Now, Avalon has been taken out of Sakura's body. So with Sakura as the medium, the magic channel between you and Avalon should be broken, right? After Noah mentioned this, Rin Enbin and Ryder also looked at Saber. Saber looked at Noah in a daze. After her eyes wandered back and forth between Noah and the scabbard in his hand several times, she nodded with a complicated expression. The magic channel between me and Avalon is indeed broken. The magic channel between me and Sakura has not been established. Only the karma line, which is the basis of the master, is still connected to Sakura's body. So, it did not disappear because of the loss of the supply of magic, but now it can't absorb any magic. Hearing Saber's words, Noah and Rin Enbin looked at each other and looked at Saber's ability value. Rank: Saber Master, Tatsuki Sakura. Real name: Altoria Pendragon. Attribute: Order. Good ability value: Strength, B. Durability, C. Agility, B. Magic, B. Luck, C. Noble Artifact. See previously, Saber's master was not so much Mitsubishi Sakura, but rather Avalon. Now, however, Saber's master had truly become Mitokayama Sakura, and the magic circuit between her and Avalon had been completely cut off. As a result, Tatsuki Sakura, who could only be regarded as an ordinary person, could not provide Saber with enough magic, which greatly reduced Saber's power. Noah was right. Because of the removal of Avalon, Saber was indeed affected. Mana supply? Rin and Osaka seemed to have thought of something and fell into deep thought. On the other hand, Saber herself did not care about her condition at all. She only looked at Noah and the scabbard in his hand with a complicated expression. Chapter 787. When Noah decided to take the scabbard out of Tatsuki Sakura's body, the girls already knew. For everyone, Gilgamesh, who was the most difficult to deal with, had already been taken care of by Noah. Although Rin and Osaka and Ryder did not know what kind of power the scabbard had, they could see that the scabbard had protected Tatsuki Sakura from being violated for more than 10 years. The power of the scabbard was indeed something to look forward to. Only Noah and Saber knew that the power of Avalon was definitely stronger than what Rin and Osaka and Ryder had imagined. In the legend of King Arthur, the scabbard played a very important role. As mentioned before, if Artoria's Excalibur represented power itself, Then the scabbard named Avalon represented protection itself. Ever since she had obtained Avalon, the Night King named Artoria had obtained immortality. Later on, the reason why Artoria died during the peak of Great Britain's development was largely because she had lost the scabbard. Therefore, compared to the Excalibur, which was known as the most powerful sacred sword in the land, the Avalon, which had another name in Fairyland, was undoubtedly more important. Artoria's sword Excalibur was an A++ grade weapon. If the power of the holy sword was truly released, it would double in an instant. The power of Excalibur would be stronger than most of the X-level relics that had reached the exception level. On the other hand, Avalon's level was truly X. It did not need to double the power of the scabbard, nor did it need any external enhancement. The scabbard named Avalon's level had already reached X level. Noah believed that as long as he had Avalon, even Gilgamesh, who had all the prototypes of the relics, would not be able to break through the defense of the scabbard. Therefore, Noah chose to retrieve Avalon. Then, the only problem left was how to stop Gilgamesh's ambition. Gilgamesh had said that he would first look for the only remaining servant besides Saber and Rider Berserker. If Gilgamesh could absorb Berserker's soul into the little Holy Grail, then this Holy Grail would be able to barely open the hole that leads to the origin and release the billions of curses. Knowing this, there was only one thing left that everyone needed to do. The castle of Urzbalin. He definitely had to make a trip to this place. Whoosh! Along with the sharp sound of breaking through the air, a pure white comet flashed over the entire Fuyuki city, heading straight in the direction of a forest. Because it was during the day, and the comet's speed was too fast, not many people noticed this phenomenon. Naturally, no one was able to discover that the body of the pure white comet was a pure and holy Pegasus. That was Ryder's Pegasus. Ryder, who was riding the Pegasus, was heading towards the forest where the castle of Urzbalin was located. On the back of the Pegasus, in addition to Ryder, there was also Noah. As for Rindosaka and Saber, because the space on the Pegasus' back was limited, they could not carry too many people, so they could only choose to travel by land. They would be slower than Noah and Ryder, but they were still on the way to the castle of Urzbalin. Now, everyone only hoped that Gilgamesh did not have time to kill Berserker. No one doubted that Gilgamesh could not kill Berserker. For everyone, Berserker, who was extremely difficult to deal with, fell into Gilgamesh's hands. He was not an existence that could not be defeated. The 12 Trials, God's Hand, had 3 functions. 1. Nullify any attack below B level. 2. Increase the resistance of attacks that have been received once until it was nullified. 3. Provide Hercules with 11 resurrection chances in the form of inventory, allowing Hercules to have 12 lives. To others, this relic was simply a nightmare. However, for Gilgamesh, who had all the prototypes of the noble phantoms, this noble phantasm could only buy him some time. After all, in Gilgamesh's treasure vault, there were many noble phantoms above B level. Even if it was no longer effective after the first attack, Gilgamesh could continue to take out new high-level relics and continue to vent his anger. It was not difficult for him to wear out Hercules' 11 resurrection chances. In the end, Hercules' fate was to die under the reign of noble phantoms. Therefore, the compatibility between the two demigods was too bad. If they did not hurry, things would go in a troublesome direction. However, in the end, Noah was still one step slower. Bang! When Noah and Ryder rode on the Pegasus and arrived at the forest where they fought with Berserker some time ago, a loud and heavy sound came from the depths of the forest. It was clear and loud, causing the ground to tremble a few times. Countless birds were startled and fled in all directions. Master! Ryder's dignified voice came into Noah's ears. Tisk! Noah's face had already sunk, and he could not help but smack his lips. Let's go! Ryder silently carried out the order and rode on the Pegasus, rushing towards the direction of the loud sound that came from the depths of the forest. Not long after, a magnificent castle finally appeared in front of Noah and Ryder. Bang! However, in the magnificent castle, a loud sound came again, causing a corner of the castle to directly explode. The walls were cleanly destroyed, and thick smoke surged out from it, filling the surroundings with a sense of tension. This time, Ryder did not ask for Noah's instructions. He squeezed the Pegasus back, and in the long neigh of the Pegasus, he suddenly swooped down like a meteorite falling from the sky, and hit the castle directly. Dong! Accompanied by a roar, the Pegasus turned into a white meteorite and directly hit the castle, directly bursting the wall, causing more dense smoke and gravel to scatter in all directions like bullets. Along with Noah and Ryder, it rushed into the interior of the castle. Then, whether it was Noah or Ryder, they both saw it. In the center of the castle, in a very luxurious hall, Gilgamesh leisurely put his hands in his pockets, and the space around him was full of golden ripples. From the ripples, all kinds of weapons shot out, piercing through the air, and covering the scene in front of him. In front of the overwhelming rain of treasures, Berserker, who was holding a ferocious axe and sword, had his sweaty body pierced through by many luxurious treasures. This great hero was riddled with holes, and blood was everywhere. As for Ilya, at this moment this little girl was being protected by Berserker. Her beautiful face, which usually had the innocence of an angel and the cruelty of a demon, was filled with nervousness and timidity. Then, the arrival of Noah and Ryder naturally attracted the attention of everyone present. "You're here, kid?" Gilgamesh just tilted his head slightly and glanced in the direction of Noah, and a sadistic expression emerged on his face. "Unfortunately, you're too late." After saying that, Gilgamesh raised his hand, and a spear directly shot out from a golden ripple in the space around him, landing directly on Berserker's chest. Poochie! With the sound of flesh being torn apart, the luxurious spear pierced through Berserker's heart, and the ferocious expression on the giant's face froze on the spot. "Oh! Ha 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 ha!" Ilya's scream and Gilgamesh's loud laughter resounded in the entire space. Chapter 788. Bang! Berserker's body was like an iron tower. His body was pierced through by various noble artifacts. With a loud bang, he knelt on the ground with his head lowered. Chi! On Berserker's body, his muscles that were as red as burning iron slowly extinguished, and the crimson color gradually dimmed. Seeing this scene, how could Noah not know what happened? The 11 lives stored in Berserker's noble artifact had all been exhausted. No. Coupled with the attack of the luxurious spear that pierced through Berserker's heart, Berserker's last life was coming to an end. In the beginning, Noah, Rin and Osaka, Ryder, and Archer spent a lot of effort to defeat a difficult opponent. At this time, in the hands of the hero king named Gilgamesh, he couldn't even cause a trace of damage to the opponent and ushered in the fate of being eliminated. Just as Noah expected at the beginning, Hercules couldn't win against Gilgamesh, who had all his noble artifacts. Gilgamesh was right. Although Noah desperately rushed over, he was still one step too late. No! Ilya, who had been protected by Berserker, looked at Berserker kneeling in front of her like a helpless child and shook her head in disbelief. No, it shouldn't be like this. Berserker is the strongest, he definitely won't lose to such a guy. While speaking, Ilya, as if to prove that everything in front of her was fake, couldn't help but walk towards Berserker. She also stretched out a hand, intending to touch Berserker. In this way, the soul of the fifth servant is also in my hands. In this regard, Gilgamesh smiled indifferently. Soon, as if he remembered something, he narrowed his wine-red eyes and looked at Ilya next to Berserker. "I almost forgot. When there are two little holy grail, the soul of the servant that disappears will be absorbed by the one that is closer to the servant. The puppet on the other side won't allow you to touch the item that I obtained with great difficulty." With such a sentence, Gilgamesh raised his hand again, and a sword-shaped noble artifact immediately emerged from a ripple beside him. Like a bullet, it shot in Ilya's direction. With Ilya's reaction, it was naturally impossible for her to realize what kind of situation she was in. Roar! Just as Ilya was about to lose her life under Gilgamesh's noble artifact, Berserker seemed to have gained terminal lucidity. He suddenly raised his head and roared. He turned around and blocked in front of Ilya, who did not have time to react. Poochie! The sharp long sword directly penetrated Berserker's broad back, and once again penetrated Berserker. Roar! However, Berserker didn't care about his situation at all. Ignoring the noble artifacts that entered his body, he let out a final roar, picked up Ilya, and threw the unprepared Ilya away. That direction happened to be the direction of Noah and Ryder, who were riding on the Pegasus. Looking at the petite Ilya being thrown over and half kneeling behind Ryder, Noah, who was on the Pegasus' back, stood up almost subconsciously, stretched out his hand, and took Ilya into his arms. It wasn't until this moment that Noah realized what had happened. Berserker, who should have lost his mind and entered a berserk state without any room to think, actually protected Ilya at the last moment and even entrusted Ilya to Noah. Noah couldn't help but cast his gaze on Berserker on the ground and met Berserker's eyes. In those eyes there was no longer the ruthlessness and madness from when they first met. Instead, there was only the vicissitudes of life that had been tempered through numerous tests. Although Berserker didn't speak, Noah read a message from those vicissitudes of life in his eyes. "I'll leave this child to you." Roar. In the next moment, Berserker's roar once again resounded throughout the entire space. His battered body was like a chariot as he charged madly in Gilgamesh's direction. Gilgamesh's expression suddenly changed as he collided with Berserker. Unfortunately, Berserker's final struggle didn't succeed in the end. Wong! Golden ripples suddenly appeared around Berserker's body. Then, with a sudden tremor, a chain that was flowing with gold and silver light extended from the ripples. The chain had a wedge at the front. It wandered in the air for a while before quickly wrapping around Berserker's body. Immediately after, the chain tightened and firmly bound the giant who was charging over. Roar! Berserker kept struggling, but the more he struggled, the tighter the chains around his body became. In the end, Berserker, who had an A+ strength value, was completely unable to break free from the chains on his body. The higher the divinity of the target, the harder the noble phantasm will be. This is one of the rare noble phantasms, Heavenlock, Enkidu. For someone like you who has high divinity, this noble phantasm is your natural enemy. So don't waste your energy, great hero. Less than a meter away from Berserker, who was constantly struggling, Gilgamesh raised his head slightly and looked at Berserker's resolute face. He seemed to be admiring and mocking him. In order to protect your master, you even managed to overcome the madness that was bestowed upon you because of your rank? No wonder you're a hero who could overcome 12 impossible tasks. After saying that, Gilgamesh turned around. Unfortunately, it's over. Hercules, although the time was short, you really made me happy. When this sentence fell from Gilgamesh's mouth, a ripple flashed in front of Berserker's face. Like a spring, a huge spear suddenly popped out and landed on Berserker's face. Bang! Without any suspense, Berserker's head exploded, splashing blood and minced meat. Berserker's struggling body suddenly stopped, and his huge arms slowly drooped down. Immediately after, Berserker's body slowly dissipated into the air, disappearing from the spot. Berserker exit. Berserker. Ilya, who was lying in Noah's arms, just happened to see this scene and let out a sorrowful cry. Apart from Ilya's sorrowful cry, the entire place was silent, and no other sound could be heard. Only Gilgamesh, as if he had done something insignificant, turned his head and looked at Noah, who was riding on the Pegasus and hugging the sorrowful Ilya, and revealed an evil smile. The last chess piece has been gathered, and the game has finally entered the final stage. Boy, what do you think? Hearing that, Noah tightly hugged the crying Ilya in his arms and closed his eyes. After a long while, he slowly opened his eyes and looked at Gilgamesh with a calm gaze. Then, Noah's voice echoed in the surroundings. If this is just a game to you, then it's time for us to enter the final stage. It's better to end this boring game as soon as possible. Under Noah's strangely calm gaze and words, Gilgamesh's body stiffened, and a feeling of palpitation suddenly emerged in his heart. This made the smile on Gilgamesh's face disappear bit by bit. Then try to stop me and see what happens. Boy. Leaving this sentence, Gilgamesh turned around, jumped up to the big hole at the top, and disappeared into the castle. Watching Gilgamesh leave, Noah didn't chase after him. Because there was no need to chase after him. The curtain of the end would be pulled down tonight. Noah had this premonition. Chapter 789. An indescribable silence filled the living room of Anaka's house. Anaka and Ilya sat in two different seats and glared at each other, as if they were going to start a fight at any moment. The atmosphere was indescribable and somewhat comical. Noah, who was leaning against the wall, couldn't help but sigh at this scene. Say, you've been like this for 10 minutes. You should stop now, right? As soon as he said that, Rin and Osaka glared at Noah fiercely. I haven't settled the score with you yet, and you're blaming me? Settle the score? Noah looked around and shrugged. What do I owe you? What do you owe me? You're asking me what I owe you? I want to ask you the same thing. Rinanaka pointed at Ilya and shouted at Noah. Why did you bring Ilya to my house? It wasn't strange for Rinanaka to have such a reaction. First of all, the Inaka family was Rinanaka's workshop to begin with. It wasn't a joking matter to be invaded by a magician who viewed him as an enemy. Secondly, Ilya was also Rinanaka's enemy. That was why she encouraged Noah to cooperate with Rinanaka. Now that Noah suddenly brought Ilya to the Inaka family, Rinanaka didn't lose his temper on the spot and endured until now. This was already very impressive. Facing such an aggressive Rin and Osaka, Ilya was in a very bad mood and counterattacked. Don't make such a big fuss over such a trivial matter. You're not a child, Rin. Whether you're a qualified magician or a well-mannered lady, your current performance will only make me look at the house of Inaka in a new light. Rin and Osaka glared at Ilya furiously. Ilya glared back at him, unwilling to be outdone. The scene returned to how it was at the start. Because Saber was taking care of Mitsuharu Sakura in the room and Ryder was guarding outside in her spirit form, apart from Rinanaka and Ilya, there was only Noah in the room. Noah's patience was reaching its limit as he endured the confrontation between the two little devils who didn't like each other. If you want to continue the game of staring and dying, then I'm leaving. After saying that, Noah really did turn around and looked like he was about to leave, which surprised both Rin Osaka and Ilya. Wait! Rinanaka hugged Noah's arm. You still haven't explained the situation to me. If Big Brother is leaving, then I'm leaving too. Ilya hugged Noah's leg and said with a unique sweet voice. Compared to being with Rin, it's more interesting to be with Big Brother. Big Brother must be thinking the same, right? Who wants to be with you? Rin and Osaka subconsciously hugged Noah's arm and retorted, not to be outdone. Also, compared to being with a bad kid like you, Noah will think it's more interesting to be with me. What did you say? Ilya's pretty face finally showed some anger. Of course not. Compared to being with an unmannered woman like Rin, Big Brother will think it's more interesting to be with me. Huh? What's so interesting about being with a child who hasn't fully developed yet? Of course it's more interesting to be with me, right? Humph, if you want to teach Ilya a lesson like this, you might as well wait a few more years before coming back. Undoubtedly, your development isn't any better. What did you say? It's coming, the unmannered baboon is shouting again. Look, Big Brother, it's better to abandon this kind of woman, right? You damn kid. You fake woman. Damn kid. Fake woman. Separated by Noah, Rinanaka and Ilya suddenly entered a state of quarrel. Noah, whose arm was tightly hugged by Rinanaka, and whose leg was tightly hugged by Ilya, had a headache. On the other hand, she was like an elegant young lady in front of outsiders, but was like a little devil at home. On the other side was a pure angel in the eyes of others, but a cruel devil in the eyes of insiders. They were both heirs of one of the 3 Yu houses. Was the compatibility between Rinanaka and Ilya so bad? No, these 2 young ladies were just trying to show off their strength, right? After all, when they first met, the reason why Ilya appeared and killed Noah's group was entirely because Rin and Osaka dropped the ball and foolishly forgot that the forest was the Ahrensberg family's territory and brought Noah there. As Ilya had always been the one who took the initiative to attack, she was reduced to the point where she had to be taken in by the person she let off once. This fact made Ilya feel somewhat awkward and stubborn. In other words, these 2 young ladies were trying to cover up their loss of composure in front of each other. How should he put it? In Noah's opinion, these 2 young ladies were extremely childish. Anyway, Noah almost fainted from the quarrel. Clang! At the next moment, a series of knocks sounded in unison. Ah! It hurts! Rinanaka and Ilya hugged their heads at the same time and squatted down with tears welling up in the corners of their eyes. What are you doing? You hit my head? Big Brother is a bad guy. Noah silently retracted his hand from the 2 girls' heads inside. Look at the situation now and you still have the mood to quarrel. I really have to hand it to you. We're just quarreling and didn't fight. You should be glad. Rinanaka was unconvinced. We're magicians. Since we've met, there's nothing strange about killing each other at any time. What's the big deal about quarreling? I don't want to quarrel with Rin. Ilya threw a tantrum. It's Rin who kept yelling. I couldn't stand it. Seeing that the two young ladies were about to quarrel again, Noah held his head as if he couldn't take it anymore. I'm an idiot for being so serious with you. No matter what, this is my home. Rinanaka rubbed his head that was hit by Noah and pulled a long face. It's fine if it's Sakura, but Ilyasfield is the head of the Ahrensburg family. I can't tolerate her walking around in my house. Era, is the leader of this generation of the Tozaka family so petty? Ilya said as if nothing had happened. No matter what kind of person they are, since they've come to visit as guests, then as the host I should generously entertain them. That's what a mature adult should do. Ling, you look older than me, but don't tell me that you don't even know something of this level? Rinanaka's mouth twitched and his eyes almost spat out flames as he glared at Ilya. Facing Rinanaka's gnashing of teeth, Ilya turned around and hugged Noah's leg tightly. Her childish appearance disappeared and was replaced by the willfulness of a child. No matter what Rin says, I won't leave Big Brother's side. If you want to chase Ilya away, then let Big Brother leave with Ilya. Although her words sounded willful, only Noah could hear a trace of timidity and attachment in them. Ilya said resolutely, Berserker is no longer around. Berserker is no longer here. Only Big Brother will protect Ilya. Ilya, you must never leave Big Brother's side. Hearing this, even Rinanaka didn't know what to say. Noah was even more silent. It was apparent that Berserker's disappearance had a bigger impact on Ilya than Noah imagined. Now that the person she relied on was gone, Ilya clutched Noah tightly in her hands as if she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. It seems that I need to find some time to talk to Ilya. As this thought flashed in Noah's mind, footsteps sounded from outside the Inaka family's living room. Saber walked in from the outside and said that as soon as she appeared, Sakura is awake.